Chapter 441. Renanti's Report. Once you have consumed all the fruits, report back to me immediately. The information you provide will be helpful, so remember all the details. Alaric instructed. A month ago, he gathered a group of scholars and knowledgeable individuals to research the purple mist tree. He felt that this spiritual tree had more to offer. I will compile everything that we will experience after we consume the fruits. Renanti volunteered for the task. He was the smartest person in the group. Most of them hated reading or the idea of learning. The rest didn't even know how to read and write. All right, I will wait for your report. You may leave now. Alaric dismissed them with a wave of his hand. The young warriors stood up from their seats and bowed to him. After taking the wooden box, the group left. Can these fruits really help us advance to the Night Realm? Rasmus asked while scratching his head. He grew up in a small orphanage, so he didn't have much knowledge about spiritual plants. The things taught to him were only basic knowledge and arithmetic, so he was completely clueless about high-level information like this. His Highness will never joke about something like this. Renanti calmly replied. We will know for sure after eating them. Wolf chimed in. If we eat 4 of the fruits, there will be 6 left. Who should we give the remaining fruits to? Aaliyah suddenly asked. The group became silent as they pondered deeply. There were many talented warriors in their batch, so it was quite difficult to make a decision. We can't be reckless about this. We must think carefully about who will get the remaining fruits. Renanti spoke. How about we go by strength? Rasmus suggested. Strength is not the most important factor in determining someone's potential. Aaliyah glared coldly at him. I'm just expressing my opinion. There's no need to glare at me like that. The next day, Alaric was in his study looking over the information on the warriors that he would take with him into war. Your Highness, is there a need for you to go that far? Asked Matilda, who was massaging his back. Hearing her words, Alaric put down the documents and turned his head to look at her. What do you mean? Matilda pointed at the documents and replied. Why are you reading the basic information about these warriors? You've been at it since yesterday. Alaric leaned on his chair and let out a deep breath. The expression on his young face revealed an uncharacteristic depth that was far beyond his age. I want to know how these people lived, so in case they meet a tragic fate on the battlefield, at least someone would remember who they were. Wouldn't it be lonely to die without someone to remember you? Alaric's voice trailed off. Most of these warriors were peasants or refugees. They had no families or relatives. Some of them didn't even have proper names. Matilda was stunned. She thought that he would just brush off her question with a simple response. But Alaric's answer blew her mind. Is this something that someone of his age would say? For an unknown reason, Matilda felt that she wasn't talking to a young prince, but an old warrior who had been through hell. Celine, who was listening at the sidelines, was also surprised by his response. Why did you stop? Alaric gestured to Matilda to continue with the massage. Oh, right. At this moment, they suddenly heard a series of knocks on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Alaric sent Celine a knowing look. Understanding his intentions, Celine nodded and went to open the door. Creak. Renanti, who was dressed in his training uniform, stepped inside the room, holding a piece of rolled parchment paper. Greetings, Your Highness. I'm here to give my report. Alaric stared deeply at him, a faint smile appearing on his lips. Oh, look at this guy. It seems like the fruit worked well. Renanti Knight EXP 1/500. Potential A. Traits: Pain Tolerance A. Spear Mastery A. Horseback Riding C. Close Combat C. Archery E. Hunting E. Tracking F. Sixth Sense F. Strength 66. Stamina 60. Agility 61. Vitality 55. Endurance 70. Mana 30. His attributes are insanely high for a newly advanced knight. Alaric determined his raw attributes to be on par with the veteran knights of the household who had years of experience. Renanti felt unusually nervous upon meeting his gaze. It felt as if his very soul was being laid bare. "Your Highness, I have compiled what we experienced after consuming the purple mist fruit." He handed the parchment paper while saying this. Alaric took the paper and read the contents quietly while gesturing at Renanti to take his seat. The latter didn't dare disturb him and just silently waited as Alaric read the report. At this moment, he noticed the woman behind Alaric looking at him with curious eyes. He hurriedly looked away, afraid to be misunderstood. A moment later, Alaric put down the parchment paper and smiled faintly. "Not bad. You wrote it well. It must have been difficult to compile all this information." Renanti felt a wave of joy after hearing his compliments. "It wasn't that hard, Your Highness. I just had to note down what the others had felt during the advancement process. Well, they weren't able to properly articulate their experiences, but it was easy to understand since I went through the same thing." "Is that so? It looks like you have a knack for this kind of task." "Not bad. Keep it up." Alaric chuckled. Renanti was the steadiest person of the cohort, but a simple compliment made him excited. He is still young after all. Alaric thought to himself. "Gather the 10 people who consumed the fruits and bring them to the training ground. I would like to see their progress myself," he instructed. Hearing this, Renanti was pleasantly surprised. He stood up and bowed his head deeply, saying, "I obey your commands." Chapter 442. A warm scene. "Let's go." Alaric stood up and walked towards the door. Renanti and the 2 ladies immediately followed him. Upon stepping out of the room, Alaric saw Dudu standing outside holding a large piece of skewered barbecued meat. "Dudu, what are you doing here all by yourself?" Smiling, Alaric picked up the little girl and rubbed her head. "I couldn't reach the doorknob, so I waited outside." The little girl pouted. "Uncle, you should build a shorter door, so I can go inside your study room whenever I want." Alaric laughed, amused by her words. Dudu should have knocked on the door. "No. The bad elf teacher said that I shouldn't disturb you when you have a visitor." She shook her head, puffing her cheeks in displeasure. Alaric chuckled. He knew who she was talking about. "Dudu, you shouldn't call your teacher like that. That is disrespectful. If I hear you say that again, I will tell your teacher," Alaric sternly said while wiping off the oil stains on her chubby face. Dudu looked scared when she heard this. "No, I will not call her that again. I promise." "Please, uncle, don't tell her." Yes, I won't tell her." Alaric observed Dudu's attributes and discovered that her powers were still sealed. "I hope you can live like a normal child, Dudu." Soon they arrived at the training ground. Renanti returned a moment later with 9 more people. They were the young warriors who had consumed the purple mist fruits. Alaric was already familiar with all of them, so there was no need for introductions. He used his appraisal on them one by one to check their progress. Surprisingly, most of them had doubled their attributes. The most shocking one was Wolf. His stats were already close to the threshold for knights when he had just advanced. "You guys didn't fail to surprise me." Alaric couldn't help but smile upon seeing their quick progress. "In just a year you have become knights. You have the best potential in the household. Even in the entire empire, you guys are among the very top. However, potential alone won't determine your future success." Alaric shook his head. He had seen many talented warriors die prematurely. "The most important thing is your determination to overcome any trial. On the battlefield, you will encounter numerous life and death experiences. In war, there is no chivalry. You must kill your enemies to survive. You must remember it well." Alaric warned them. A good person was usually the first one to die on the battlefield. Alaric wasn't trying to brainwash them. This was the truth about war. A single second of hesitation would cost you your life. For the next few days, you will be training under Sir Rigor. Don't expect this training to be a walk in the park. This will be different than your usual physical training. Alaric wanted to give them one final training before the war. They might be powerful for their age, but they still lacked the experience of a veteran warrior. To survive a large-scale war, Strength alone wouldn't be enough. Alaric talked for another half an hour before he sent them to rigor. After they left, an unexpected person suddenly spoke. Some of them might not make it out alive. Are you sure about sending them into battle? Alaric turned his head and looked at Selene with narrowed eyes. It's uncharacteristic of you to be concerned with someone. Selene looked away from him and responded. They are still young. War will only leave lifelong wounds in their hearts. Alaric sighed and shook his head. He was about to say something when Dudu suddenly grabbed his hand. Uncle, I want to visit Gwenaëlle. Author's note. Gwenaëlle is Alaric's baby sister, pronounced as Gunayel. Looking at her bored face, Alaric let out a smile. All right, let's go visit her. Dudu's eyes brightened. She reached out her hands as if asking him to carry her. Seeing this, Alaric chuckled and lifted the girl. Dudu, you seem to be heavier now. The little girl tilted her head in confusion. Selene and Matilda watched their interaction as they followed Alaric to the main mansion. It was only in front of Dudu and his baby sister that Alaric would reveal this kind of behavior. Sometimes they even felt that he was a completely different person. A few minutes later, they arrived in front of Maria's bedchamber. Alaric knocked on the door, which was quickly opened by a maidservant. Your Highness! The servant was startled when she saw that it was Alaric. Where is the madam? Alaric asked. The servant carefully answered. The madam is inside with Miss Gwenaëlle. Do you want me to inform the madam about your arrival? There is no need. We came here to visit them. Hearing this, the maidservant brought them inside the spacious room. It was like a small house in itself with a few twists and turns. Soon, they reached the bedchamber, which was guarded by 4 female knights. Your Highness! The female knights greeted him upon seeing him. Maria heard this and immediately rushed to see her son. My son, did you come to see your sister? She approached Alaric and gave him a tight hug. Alaric smiled as he replied. Dudu wanted to see Gwenaëlle, so I brought her here. Maria turned her gaze to Dudu when she heard this. So that's the case. How have you been, Dudu? Maria was about to pinch the little girl's cheeks, but she quickly swatted her hand and buried her face into Alaric's chest. Maria could only smile bitterly at her actions. She would always squeeze Dudu's cheeks every time she saw her, but it seemed like the girl had been traumatized by it. I'm sorry, Dudu. I promise I won't squeeze your cheeks hard this time. Hearing this, Dudu turned her head. You promise? Yes, I promise. Maria nodded with a chuckle. Okay. The little interaction made Alaric laugh. In the next moment, Maria brought them to the bed where Gwenaëlle was sleeping. She just slept, so don't make any noise. Chapter 443. Alaric's Determination. Alaric watched his baby sister's innocent little face with a gentle smile. He reached out his hand, but he stopped midway, afraid that he might wake her up with a slight touch. I heard from your father that you will be leaving soon. Maria's worried voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Turning his head, Alaric's expression turned serious as he replied. We will march to Harun in a few days. Maria's eyes shook as she spoke in a trembling voice. Do you really have to go? You don't need to endanger yourself, son. The Empire has plenty of powerful warriors. The imperial family can send someone to replace you. Alaric shook his head firmly. Harun attacked the western region in retaliation for going against their imperial family. Their crown prince desires my mother, and they killed thousands of our people just because of his selfish interests. He must be punished, and I want him to die by my own hands. Alaric's voice was filled with suppressed rage. Maria grabbed his hands and whispered, Please don't go, son. Harun has already suffered disastrous losses during the war in Aklan Pass. I don't think they will attack us again. Alaric sighed and shook his head. For how long will this peace last? We can't say for certain that they won't attack us again. The only way to prevent Harun from occupying our lands and killing our people is to take the initiative to fight them. Staring deeply at his mother, Alaric said in a cold, determined voice, Mom, this is a battle that I must fight. Tears slid down Maria's cheeks. She could see the firm determination in his eyes, and she knew for sure that she couldn't change his mind anymore. Alaric took his mother in his embrace and gently patted her back without saying anything. Dudu watched their interaction with a baffled look. She was still too young to understand what they were talking about, but she instinctively knew that she shouldn't say anything. A moment later, Maria wiped off her tears and lifted her head. "Just promise me that you will always prioritize your safety. If things get bad, you must retreat immediately." Alaric nodded and responded with a faint smile. "I promise." It was an emotional moment for the mother and son, but Alaric felt more relaxed now that he had told Maria about the situation. Unlike his birth mother, Jade Christine, Maria was more emotional. The latter had also just given birth, so she was prone to mental distress and anxiety. "You should talk with your mother about this. She might look calm on the surface, but I'm sure that she is also worried about you," Maria suggested. Alaric was already thinking of visiting his birth mother to discuss this matter, so he nodded. "I will." The two chatted for some time before Alaric left. He didn't take Dudu with him since the little girl wanted to wait for Gwenaëlle to wake up. On their way to Jade Christine's room, Alaric paused his steps. He turned his head and looked at Celine, who had her head lowered the entire time, seemingly in deep thought. "Do you hate me for planning this invasion on your empire?" Celine looked startled, her eyes shaking. Sensing the tension, Matilda stood between them, looking incredibly worried. "Your Highness." Alaric ignored her and kept his eyes on Celine. "Your crown prince covets my mother, and I'm pretty sure that he had a hand in the attack in the western region. Yes, we killed your warriors, but you must remember that we were only defending our lands." Celine clenched her fists. Her eyes flashed with complicated emotions. After losing the war and becoming a slave, she hated everyone in Estania. However, her feelings gradually changed after interacting more with their people. She was conflicted. "You are free to return to your nation, but if I see you on the battlefield, I will not hesitate to dash. I know that it was Haroun's mistake to attack your country, but our citizens are innocent. Most of them don't even know what's going on. If you attack our land, those innocent people will be implicated." "Oh no, what should I do?" Matilda didn't know what to do, and she could only hug Celine, hoping that she would stop provoking Alaric. Alaric's eyes remained cold as he responded. "Haroun must pay for what they did. You can call me a demon or a devil, but you can't stop me." He turned around and added, "You can return and flee with your family. That is my last mercy as your lord." After saying those words, Alaric walked away without looking back. Celine wanted to say something, but Matilda immediately covered her mouth. "Please don't say anything more, Celine. His Highness is already merciful enough to spare you. If you had said those words to someone else, you might be—" She didn't finish her words, but Celine knew what she meant. "What should I do, Matilda? I understand His Highness's fury, but I don't want to see my country suffer. I don't know what to do." This was the first time Celine showed her fragile side. Matilda wanted to console her, but no words came out of her mouth. The only thing she could do was hug Celine. "I'm sorry, Celine. I want to help you, but I'm only a lowly slave." While the two were getting more emotional, Alaric headed straight to Jade Christine's room. He was aware that his decision would kill thousands of innocent people, but he had already hardened his resolve. To ensure that Haroun wouldn't attack Estania, he was ready to kill, even if doing so would make everyone call him a devil. Not long later, he found himself in front of Jade's room. He took a deep breath and sorted his thoughts before he knocked on the door. "Knock, knock, knock. It's me," he announced. Creak. A young maidservant opened the door and greeted him with a bow. "Her Highness is waiting for you." Alaric nodded and stepped inside the room. Chapter 444, March. Upon entering the room, the first thing that greeted him was the paintings on the wall that depicted the most beautiful scenery of Estania. One of them was a painting of Birming Island. Alaric stopped for a moment to admire the beautiful artwork. "Do you like it?" A familiar voice echoed. He turned his head and saw Jade Christine approaching him with a warm smile. Behind her was Samaya, who lowered her head upon meeting Alaric's gaze. "Mom!" Alaric smiled faintly. "You can take it if you want." Jade chuckled while looking at the Birming Island painting. Alaric shook his head. "How can I take something from your collection?" His mother loved collecting all sorts of paintings. She had even hired the best painters to make a portrait for each direct member of House Silversword. "Is that so? I won't force you then." Smiling, Jade linked arms with him and brought him inside the room. "So why did you come to visit me? You rarely visit your mother." Jade spoke in a chiding tone. Alaric didn't respond right away and signaled to his mother, motioning that there were other people around. Jade was smart and quickly understood what he meant. Soon, they arrived at a mini living room which was adjacent to her bedchamber. "Leave us." Jade waved off the servants, including Samaya. After everyone left, Jade grabbed a pot of freshly brewed tea and asked her son, "Would you like some tea?" "No. I already had one earlier." Alaric shook his head. Jade didn't insist and took her seat. "Now tell me, what is on your mind?" Alaric was trying hard not to reveal it, but she could tell that something was weighing on his mind. With a serious face, Alaric replied, "Mom, I will march to Haroon in a few days." Jade Christine didn't give much of a reaction. It even seemed like she had already expected this. "I see. I know that I will not be able to stop you, so I will not try to dissuade you." While saying this, she poured tea for herself. Through his enhanced eyesight, Alaric noticed the slight quivering of her hand. "Thank you, Mom." Alaric reached out his hand and grabbed the teapot from her. Jade didn't stop him and let him take it away. "You will have another younger sibling, so you must return unharmed." Hearing this, Alaric was startled. "You mean you are?" Jade smiled faintly and rubbed her stomach with a gentle gaze. "Amen. The doctors have already checked it, but it will take some time before they can confirm the gender." Alaric's eyes went wide. "I can't believe this. Congratulations, Mom." He was happy for his mother, and he was also excited at the thought of having another sibling. "Think of a name for the child before you leave the town." Jade knew that he would be away for a long time, so she wanted Alaric to give the child a name while he was still here. Alaric rubbed his chin thoughtfully and said with confidence, "I'm good at giving names. I will definitely come up with 4 good names that you can choose from." Hearing his confident tone, Jade chuckled. For the next 2 hours, the mother and son chatted about other matters. 5 days later, Alaric, who was dressed in his battle armor, stepped out of the main mansion. A fierce wind suddenly blew past him, making his red cape flutter violently. Outside the mansion were thousands of warriors, standing neatly in rows and columns. The families of the warriors were also present, looking at them with emotional faces. Alaric looked at the gathered crowd, his eyes soon resting on his family's faces. Taking a deep breath, Alaric walked towards the front where his horse was standing. He rubbed the horse's belly before jumping onto its back. After locking his feet on the stirrup, Alaric pulled the reins to make the horse face the crowd. "Everyone, I believe that you have already said your goodbyes to your families. Take a good look at them, as this might be the last chance you will ever see them." Alaric wasn't trying to scare them. Death was inevitable in war. Not everyone would have the luck to make it out alive. The stern-faced soldiers became emotional as they looked at the faces of their families. Meanwhile, the family members were crying and shouting their final goodbyes. It was a heart-wrenching scene. "Silence!" Alaric shouted after some time, his loud voice gathering everyone's attention. With a fierce look, Alaric opened his mouth and spoke. "A few months ago, Haroon attacked our lands and killed hundreds of thousands of our people. We don't know for sure when they will attack us again, but we cannot let that happen. Today, we will march to prevent the same tragedy from happening. It will be a long and arduous journey." He paused and scanned the faces of the warriors before he continued. "Not all of us might return alive, but this is a battle that we must fight to make sure that Haroon will never set foot on our lands once more. Warriors of House Silversword, move out." The loud sounds of the marching drums followed his speech. The cries of the families left behind drifted into their ears, gripping at their hearts. Alaric took one last look at his family before he turned his gaze forward. "I will be back. Promise." Under his leadership, close to 10,000 warriors departed that day. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly echoed behind him. "Don't overthink it. You are the Prince of Estania. You are only doing what is best for your country." He turned his head and saw Ivana riding on her horse. Alaric shook his head. "Are you sure about this? You will put yourself into danger if you follow me." Ivana snorted at his words. "Of course. I already told you that I will follow you wherever you go. You can't stop me." Chapter 445. The New Transcendent Knight of House Paxley. A few days later, House Silversword's army took a stop in a forested area somewhere in the northern region. "We have arrived at our first stop, Your Highness," Aldrin reported. Alaric looked around before moving his eyes to a map of the northern region. "We will set up camp here and rest for the night. Tell everyone to set up the tents and send scouts to observe the area," he instructed. "I obey your commands." Aldrin bowed his head deeply, turned around, and left to complete the task. After sending him away, Alaric jumped off his horse and went ahead to set up his tent. This brings back memories. When he was part of the Crown Prince's army in his past life, he had mastered the art of setting up a tent. It was one of the basic skills that a soldier must learn. "Your Highness, why are you doing this on your own? Let me do it for you." A surprised voice drifted into his ears. Alaric turned his head and saw Rigger rushing to his side. Seeing him running towards him, Alaric raised his hand and said, "I'll do it on my own." "This?" Rigger stopped in his tracks, hesitating. Alaric ignored him and focused his attention on his task. Rigger was taken aback upon seeing his skillful hands. When did His Highness learn to do this? In just a few minutes, Alaric erected his tent without anyone's help. Alaric admired his handiwork with a faint smile. "It's been a while since I set up my tent. I should do this more often." Suddenly, he noticed that Rigger was still there. "Sir Rigger." Rigger was startled. "I apologize, Your Highness. I didn't notice the time. Do you need my help for anything?" "I have nothing in mind for now." "Wait." Alaric seemed to have remembered something important. "The northern houses. We should be meeting a few of them soon. Keep me updated about their whereabouts." They had already sent letters to the northern houses, instructing them to gather troops and march westward. Rigger acknowledged his command with a bow. "Yes, Your Highness. I will send our scout team to track their location. Is there anything else?" "That's it for now. You may leave." Alaric dismissed him with a wave of his hand. Rigger took this as his cue to leave. A moment later, another figure approached him. The fragrant scent of jasmine lingered in the air, assailing his nostrils. "Ivana, are you staying in my tent tonight?" Alaric smiled at her. Hearing this, Ivana snorted. "Keep dreaming. I only came here to check on you." While saying this, she used her integrated monster trait to create a chair made out of vines. "That's an amazing skill you have right there," Alaric praised. Other than minor healing properties, her nature's blessing allowed her to manipulate any plant life form. As long as there were plants around her, she could control them at will. If used properly, this skill alone would make her a formidable force. Unfortunately, she was only a 2-ringed Beast Soul Adept, so her degree of control was still limited. Author's note: Beast Soul Warrior's ranking system has been changed to Beast Soul Novice, Beast Soul Adept, Beast Soul Master, Beast Soul Grandmaster. Ivana felt a hint of pride upon hearing his praise. She leaned on the vine chair and crossed her legs, exposing her jade-like legs. "How many northern houses have answered your call?" she asked all of a sudden. Alaric thought for a moment and replied. Surprisingly, most of the northern houses responded favorably. If nothing goes wrong, about 90% of them should be heading to the central region by now. "I see. That's good to hear." Ivana already had some idea of the military strength of the northern houses. Excluding House Silversword, which had over 10,000 warriors, each northern house had around 100 to 1,000 soldiers. With 90% of them joining the march, they could gather approximately 150,000 troops. The north wouldn't be a problem, but I am worried about the other regions. Alaric sighed as he sat on the grass. We don't know for sure if they would be willing to join this expedition. Not all aristocrats and martial houses would answer our call since this isn't a command from His Majesty. Ivana sneered. Even in the face of adversity, you humans are still not united. That is your greatest weakness. Alaric smiled bitterly at her words. That is true. I can't deny that. I don't understand what your emperor is thinking. If he had only revealed himself and led the people, there would have been fewer sacrifices. Ivana shook her head. Alaric remained silent. He had also tried to understand the emperor's intentions, but he failed. Looking at his thoughtful expression, Ivana no longer bothered him. You should get some sleep. I will rest my eyes for a few hours. While saying this, she manipulated the plants to create a small tent made of leaves and vines. Chuckling, Alaric stood up and went inside his tent. Good night. The next day, the soldiers dismantled their camp and continued their march. They later encountered 7 northern houses, which included House Paxley and a few other martial houses from Ryvad. Greetings, Your Highness. The person leading House Paxley's troops was Theo, the current heir of House Paxley. Alaric smiled faintly upon seeing him. It has been a while, brother-in-law. He cupped his fists. Theo scratched his head and reminded him with a wry smile. Please don't call me that in public, Your Highness. You have an image to maintain. Alaric chuckled, feeling amused to see him embarrassed. You have become more powerful since the last time I saw you. Using his appraisal, he discovered that Theo's stats had grown considerably. He had already cemented himself as one of the best knights in the northern region. Theo shook his head and replied, My fast growth wouldn't be possible without the resources you sent, Your Highness. Our warriors also advanced significantly. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we have gained a new transcendent knight, he added with a proud look. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback. He had kept tabs on House Paxley's situation, but he hadn't heard of them getting a new transcendent knight. Oh? Is it someone I know? Alaric couldn't hide his curiosity. Theo revealed a smug look. You have definitely seen him before, Your Highness. You just hadn't interacted much with him since he is one of my father's closest confidants. Do you want me to bring him here? Look at this guy. He really knows how to flaunt. Alaric chuckled and nodded his head. All right, bring him to see me. With pleasure. Theo eagerly left. A moment later, he returned with an old warrior who seemed to be in his late 50s. He was dressed in full steel battle armor with a blue cape that displayed House Paxley's emblem. Alaric used his appraisal on the old man. Nord. Transcendent Knight EXP. 3/5000. Potential A. Traits. Horseback riding S. Spear mastery A. Close combat A. Hunting A. Command B. Cool-headed B. Tracking C. Swordsmanship C. Shield mastery C. Pain tolerance D, Strength 251. Stamina 254. Agility 262. Vitality 270. Endurance 278. Mana 250. His attributes are painfully average. At least he is a good rider and he has some decent combat traits. Alaric was a bit disappointed, but he didn't show it to his face. Greetings, Your Highness. I am Nord, the newly promoted Transcendent Knight of House Paxley. Nord calmly greeted him with a standard knight's salute. Alaric smiled at the old man. Although his attributes were average, he was still much stronger than the elite knights. Furthermore, he recognized this old man and he had seen him join their past missions. To a loyal warrior like this, Alaric was willing to offer them more rewards. Congratulations on your advancement, Sir Nord. Alaric congratulated him. Thank you, Your Highness. Nord bowed deeply. Alaric offered some words of encouragement and praise which made the old warrior happy and proud. Your Highness, I have a request, Nord suddenly said. Alaric raised an eyebrow in surprise, and he looked at Theo to inquire what was happening. However, the latter shrugged and shook his head. With a doubtful look, Alaric asked, "Let's hear it." Nord stared deeply at him and opened his mouth. "I heard that a new Transcendent Knight has joined House Silversword. I would like to spar with him to check my progress." Alaric was stunned. "You want to spar with Sekus?" Ivana and a few others who were close by were similarly shocked. Some of them even sent weird gazes at the old man. Nord was oblivious to their thoughts and bowed his head. "Please grant my request, Your Highness." Alaric took a deep breath and hesitated. Whoosh! At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. Alaric knew who it was. Curling his lips, he asked, "What do you think, Sir Sekus?" "I will do as you wish, Your Highness." Chapter 446. Difference of Heaven and Earth. "Very well. I will allow it, but you two must not use any fatal moves." While saying this, he sent Sekus a deep look. He then added, "To defeat your opponent, you just have to subdue them, knock them down, or make them surrender. Do you two agree with this?" "I have no objections." Nord nodded. Sekus simply nodded. Seeing that they had agreed, Alaric gestured at the spectators to clear out some space for the two. When the warriors heard that there would be a spar between two Transcendent Knights from different households, they curiously went over to watch the match. "Is that guy from House Silversword? I don't recognize him. He must be a new Transcendent Knight. Who do you guys think will win this spar?" "Hard to say. Let's just watch." While everyone was conversing in groups, the spar had already begun. The first one to make a move was the old warrior, Nord. He was eager to make a name for himself. The thought of winning the spar in front of a large audience made him excited. He was usually a calm person, but he was swept by the excitement to prove himself. "Be careful," the old warrior warned as he drew his sword. Shirring. His sword left an arc of light in the air, making the spectators gasp in shock at the remarkable technique he executed. To the normal warriors, they only saw the old man unsheathing his sword at a strange angle, but to those with keen eyes and perception, they managed to catch a glimpse of a sword technique. Nord's sword moved so fast that it looked like a blur in the audience's eyes. Only a few experts were able to discern everything clearly. On the other hand, Sekus, who was facing the old man's sword, remained unnaturally calm. His eyes were devoid of emotion. There was no panic or tension. He calmly tilted his head, narrowly evading the sword's blade. Whoosh! What? Nord was stunned. This sword-drawing technique was his fastest and most powerful move. Although he didn't use his mana, it was still almost impossible to dodge. After dodging his sword, Sekus slashed out the dagger in his right hand, which forced Nord to lean back his head. Just then, he saw another dagger in his line of sight, and it was aimed at his neck. He uses two daggers. With his current position, dodging wasn't an option since it would completely mess his balance. His only choice was to defend himself. Gritting his teeth, he quickly angled his sword right in front of his neck. Clang! Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. The force behind the dagger almost made him fall to the ground, but Nord was surprisingly quick-footed for someone his age. With his incredible footwork, he somehow managed to stabilize himself. He created some distance to gather momentum for his next move. However, Nord discovered that his opponent was no longer in front. Where is he? Startled, he searched for Sekus through his peripheral vision, but he couldn't even find the latter's shadow. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared. You lost. An emotionless voice suddenly drifted into his ears. His face fell upon hearing this. He was about to turn his head when he felt a cold sensation on his neck. Slowly looking down, he saw a dagger just a few centimeters away from his skin. How did he? He was stunned and confused. The battle had already ended without him knowing how he had been defeated. Not even a minute had passed by. Sekus, you may now lower your dagger. The match has concluded. Alaric's voice echoed. The cold sensation on Nord's neck abruptly disappeared, making him feel relieved. He turned his head and looked at Sekus, who was nonchalantly walking towards Alaric. As for his daggers, they were nowhere to be found. Nord felt cold sweat on his back. He was terrified. In that moment, he realized that this man was someone he couldn't even hope to defeat. The difference in their power was like heaven and earth. The crowd was similarly shocked. The battle only took less than half a minute. Just when they thought that things would become more interesting, the battle had already ended. Did you see it? I only saw him pressing his dagger, but I didn't notice how he appeared behind the old man. He is so fast. I barely saw his movements. Who is he? There is another powerful figure in House Silversword. I don't know if I heard it right, but I think his name is Sekus. Everyone was still reeling in shock. At this moment, Theo had finally recovered his senses. He approached Nord, who was standing motionless, and patted the old man's shoulder. It's just a spar, Sir Nord. You fought well. He comforted. Nord smiled bitterly and shook his head. It was a one-sided fight, my lord. Even if I had used my mana, the results would have been the same. Hearing this, Theo sighed helplessly. He only wanted to show off the strength of their new Transcendent Knight, but it backfired on him. House Silversword is truly filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. He mumbled. Alaric walked towards them with a faint smile. I haven't introduced him yet. This is Sir Sekus. He joined our household recently. Sekus cupped his fists in greeting. Theo and Nord immediately returned to the gesture. It's a pleasure to meet an expert like you, Sir Sekus. Likewise, Sekus nodded. With that, the crowd dispersed and headed to their respective groups to share the news. Sekus became instantly famous. Meanwhile, his opponent, although defeated, also became known to the various houses. Later on the same day, the march continued. This time, the group was headed to a city in the outermost part of the central region where they would meet with the other aristocratic houses and martial houses. The trip took about 12 days due to their increasing size. By the time they arrived at the meetup location, the size of their army had ballooned to about 270,000. Chapter 447. Mountaintop Inn. Lemire was a large city known for its unique architecture and beautiful landscapes. It also housed many well-known tourist destinations in the empire, one of which was the famous Mountaintop Inn. Just like its name, it was an inn located at the very top of a mountain. Ordinary people couldn't enter this particular establishment without a membership card, and getting this membership card would require a hefty amount of cash. Despite its exclusivity, many tourists would still come to admire the building from afar. At this moment, Alaric was inside this inn together with the various lords from the northern region and the central region to meet Giovanni, who had hosted a small gathering. It has been a while, Alaric. You didn't send me any letter, so I was really sad. Giovanni approached him with a smile. Hearing his words, Alaric shook his head. I am sure you already know what happened. We were in the enchanted woodlands, so I didn't have the time to write you a letter. Besides, I don't think we're close enough to write letters to each other. Why are you saying that? Giovanni put on a sad look. Alaric was exasperated by his antics. Enough with your nonsense. If you have nothing serious to say, then I will leave and bring my troops to the western region. Giovanni smiled helplessly and pressed his hand on Alaric's shoulder. Relax. I have some good news to share with you. Do you think I will organize this gathering just to make fun of you? Furrowing his eyebrows, Alaric crossed his arms and leaned on his chair. Hurry up and spit it out. Giovanni chuckled. Since you are in a hurry, I won't waste your time. After saying this, he sent a hand signal to his subordinates. A moment later, there was a commotion from the crowd. Alaric frowned upon hearing the noise. Turning his head, he saw a person whom he never expected to be present. Lord Dominic? He quickly rose to his feet upon seeing this person. It was Dominic, the right-hand man of the Emperor, a powerful mythical knight. Do you want to use appraisal on the selected target? Yes. No. The last time he encountered this man, his appraisal failed due to the overwhelming difference in their strength, but things were different now. Alaric chose yes. Dominic Mythical Knight, EXP. 699/10,000. Potential as traits. Halberd Mastery, SS. Horseback Riding, SS. Swordsmanship, SS. Close Combat, S. Shield Mastery, S. Command S, comma. Strength, 711. Stamina, 699. Agility, 615. Vitality, 733. Endurance, 724. Mana, 655. Alaric was stunned by his high attributes. His raw attributes are even higher than Dad's. Although he doesn't have an SSS-Rank trait, he has 3 SS-Rank traits and an array of S-Rank traits. You are sizing me up? An amused voice drifted into his ears, interrupting his thoughts. Hearing this, Alaric smiled awkwardly. I apologize if I have offended you, Sir Dominic. He cupped his fists in a humble manner. He might be a prince, but in front of a venerable he was still nothing. Greetings, venerable. Giovanni greeted in a respectful tone. Everyone inside the building also greeted Dominic, their loud voices echoing within the establishment. Dominic smiled faintly and waved his hand, gesturing at everyone to give them some space. Please be silent, everyone. I would like to speak with the 2 highnesses. Hearing his words, the various lords didn't even protest and quickly vacated some space for them. After clearing the crowd, Dominic motioned to the 2 princes to take their seats. I will make this quick, he spoke. Alaric and Giovanni listened carefully with upright posture. For this battle, I will be joining you guys. His words sent shockwaves through the hearts of the 2 princes. Taking a deep breath, Giovanni asked with a serious expression, Sir, if you leave, who will be left to protect Estania? Dominic smiled at his words. You have nothing to worry about, Your Highness. Estania isn't as weak as you think. Even without me, the Empire can protect itself. The Venerable spoke with great confidence. His words stunned them. There were various implications behind his words, but they didn't dare speculate. And it wouldn't just be me. Ignatius will also come with us. Dominic added. What? Alaric was startled. Ignatius Firecrest was one of the main reasons why they won the battle in Ackland Pass. He was a formidable 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster who could command the power of flames. Even Lord Ignatius? Giovanni was also dumbfounded. That's right. Dominic nodded, looking amused by their reactions. Speaking of which, I briefly met Lucas on my way here. He should be speaking with His Majesty by now. If he gets His Majesty's approval, then there would be 3 venerables joining this expedition. Dominic rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Alaric frowned. Why would His Majesty send Lord Dominic and Lord Ignatius? Could it be that Haroun is anticipating our invasion? Thinking about this, his expression darkened. If Haroun had time to prepare its defenses, its troops would have a hard time invading its land. Dominic saw the sudden change in his expression. It seems like you have guessed something. Alaric nodded with an uncertain look. I'm not sure, my lord. Could you please enlighten me? Feeling curious, Giovanni perked his ears while looking at Dominic. Dominic adjusted his sitting posture and replied in a stern voice. Telling you wouldn't be a problem. We heard from our informants that Haroun had sent 3 venerables to guard their borders. 2 of them are 4-ringed beast soul grandmasters, and the other one is a mythical knight. Moreover, our informants mentioned that they also brought a powerful monster that possessed overwhelming levels of mana. The informants were uncertain, but it seems that what they discovered was a catastrophe-grade beast. The faces of Alaric and Giovanni fell upon hearing this. 3 venerables and 1 catastrophe-grade beast. That is insane. Giovanni mumbled, his eyes shaking. If only Zephyr isn't injured. Alaric thought helplessly. Chapter 448. Large army assembles in Ackland Pass. Suddenly, a notification popped up in front of him. Undersir. Mission, Haroun's Invasion 3. Mission difficulty, Hard Hell. Mission adjustment. Haroun has caught wind of Estania's plan to invade its lands. To defend its borders, they will send most of their top fighting force in hopes of crippling Estania's military power. Follow the army of Estania to successfully occupy 3 cities. Mission rewards: 10,000 battle points, 2,000 EXP, 300 stat points, 3 Ringed Beast Soul Warrior card X1, Random Trait Upgrade card X2, SSS-Rank Trait card X1. Penalty for failure: colonization of Estania. Undersir. Alaric narrowed his eyes upon seeing the changes on his chain mission. Another hell difficulty mission. From the rich rewards, he could already tell that it would be bloodier than the last hell mode mission. What made him more worried was the penalty. If they were to be defeated, Estania would be colonized and their people would be enslaved. Alaric couldn't allow that to happen. Can we even win against their lineup? You look worried, Your Highness. Do you think we will lose? Dominic's voice drifted into his ears. Hearing this, Alaric lifted his head, his face looking incredibly serious. We must not lose. Dominic could see the fire in his eyes. That's right. Losing is not an option. You have to trust our warriors, Your Highness. We will never back down even against overwhelming odds. He spoke with confidence. Alaric nodded. He had seen the willpower of Estania's warriors during the battle in Ackland Pass. They were battle-hardened warriors ready to bleed for the Empire. The trio chatted some more while sharing a meal. After their meal, Dominic announced to the army to continue the march. In the next 2 weeks, the army headed westward, absorbing the armies from the various regions. By the time they arrived at the western region, they had already amassed more than 500,000 warriors. If they included the troops that were already stationed in Ackland Pass, they could gather a staggering number of over 700,000 warriors. New tents had been set up on the mountains of Ackland Pass to accommodate the soldiers. At this moment, Dominic summoned all the highest-ranking military officers of the army to gather for a meeting. This was a high-level gathering composed mostly of transcendent knights and highly accomplished elite knights. As for the knights, they weren't even qualified to sit together with the individuals invited for this meeting. By the time Alaric arrived at the meeting venue, there was already a large crowd of high-ranking warriors seated inside. His presence attracted everyone's attention. The place became quiet for a moment as all eyes turned to size him up. Alaric remained unfazed by their scrutinizing gazes. He just casually nodded his head at the people who came to greet him. After responding to those who had approached him, Alaric went to his assigned seat and took his seat. Sekus and Galliner sat to his right and left, eyeing everyone with stern faces. Butch, Azazel, and the others sat somewhere not far from him, making sure that he was protected from all angles. Everyone present was intimidated by his security detail. That blind man must be Sir Sekus. I heard that he is on the same level as Sir Galliner. I wonder if that is true. From what I heard, a transcendent knight challenged him to a spar only to be defeated in less than half a minute. Look over there, that is Sir Fredrin. He had recently become a transcendent knight after absorbing 2 disaster-grade beast soul crystals and a large number of elixirs. Damn! Just how many transcendent knights do they have? I have no idea, but I heard that a few unaffiliated transcendent knights offered their services to His Highness. Do you see that bald old man over there? That is Sir Nile, the commander of Black Wind Fort. According to my sources, he had already sworn allegiance to House Silversword. Author's note: for reference, Nile has already been introduced briefly. Check chapter 344 for more details. Alaric could tell that everyone was talking about him, but he purposely ignored them and simply closed his eyes while waiting for Dominic to arrive. In the next half an hour, more military officers came. The seats inside the venue were soon filled, and the elite knights even had to stand at the back, which made them slightly uncomfortable. However, the astute ones knew that this was a purposeful arrangement, likely to encourage them to train harder and one day have the chance to sit with these people. 40 minutes after Alaric's arrival, the people inside suddenly quieted down. This was because a small group of people led by 2 individuals walked in. Noticing the silence, Alaric opened his eyes and turned his head. Walking side by side towards the frontmost seats were Dominic and Ignatius. Following closely behind them were the loyal experts of the imperial family, including Kristen Evander, the commander of the Griffin Knights Order. Author's note: See Chapter 376 for reference. Greetings, Venerables. Everyone respectfully greeted the two top experts. Dominic and Ignatius waved their hands to acknowledge their greetings. Ignatius went to his assigned seat, while Dominic took the stage to begin the meeting. Everyone, thank you for coming here. He scanned everyone's faces as if he wanted to commit them to his memory. You are the most accomplished warriors of Estania, the pride of the Empire. I feel proud to see you here in front of me, gathered for one ultimate goal. A long introduction followed, but no one dared to doze off. Our goal is not as simple as an invasion or to retaliate. Dominic shook his head, his commanding voice echoing across the venue. We are gathered here to prevent Harun from attacking our lands. To accomplish that, we must show them the might of our nation. After his speech, the crowd erupted into loud applause and cheers. Dominic smiled faintly and raised his hand, signaling for them to keep quiet. Now, I invite the Crown Prince to step onto the stage and discuss our battle plans, he announced. Chapter 449, Leonard's Schemes. What? His Highness is also here. Does this mean that all princes are gathered here today? Everyone was surprised by Dominic's announcement. They all thought that only Alaric and Giovanni would participate in the war. They never would have imagined that even the elusive Crown Prince, Leonard Exler-Estania, would also be here. At this moment, someone from the crowd stood up. He was wearing a hood that covered his face and his entire body so no one recognized him. The person removed his hood and revealed his face. Your Highness! Someone exclaimed upon seeing who it was. It was the Crown Prince, Leonard. Smiling lightly, Leonard cupped his fists to Dominic before walking towards the stage. TSK. Alaric heard someone clicking his tongue behind him. He didn't even need to turn around to know that it was Giovanni. Only that guy had a beef with Leonard. Upon taking the stage, Leonard displayed a map of Harun. More specifically, a map of its outermost region, which was composed of more than 20 cities and over 100 towns and villages. Leonard pointed at the map and spoke. Attacking Harun would be incredibly difficult. By now, they should have already fortified their defenses and stationed more troops to guard their borders. He pointed out several locations on the map and added, These 5 cities are our targets, but they are well defended, so we must. Your Highness, can I ask something? Someone from the crowd raised his hand. Leonard glanced at the man and nodded. All right, you can go ahead and ask. After getting his permission, the man stood up. Is there something special about those cities? From what I see, they are harder to penetrate if we consider the terrain. We will have a much easier time if we choose different cities. Hearing this, some people nodded to agree with his words. That's a good question. Leonard motioned at the man to be seated. You are right. Attacking these cities would be a lot harder due to their locations. However, I didn't choose these cities randomly. He shook his head and circled the 5 cities on the map. Look here. These cities hold strategic locations. The Crown Prince explained it simply to make it easier for everyone to understand. At first, everyone was skeptical about his plans, but when they heard his explanation, they realized that it was the ideal route for them. It was brilliant and well thought. Our first target is this city, Atarkan. Leonard pointed the stick he was holding at a specific city. Everyone looked at the map and furrowed their eyebrows. Atarkan was a city built on top of a mega mountain. It was a fortress city once built to defend Harun from foreign invaders. Through the years, it had become one of the largest and most thriving cities of the empire. From the information we gathered, Atarkan is defended by more than 100,000 warriors. Its walls are also equipped with mana cannons and trebuchets. Leonard mentioned the defensive capabilities of the city, which made everyone's face turn grim. If it was so heavily guarded, how the hell could they invade it? That was what everyone thought, and Leonard could already tell it from their expressions. There is a reason why I chose Atarkan as our first target. This is because they have one major weakness despite their strong defense. Hearing this, everyone raised their eyebrows. Leonard took out a painting of a middle-aged man and pasted it on the wall. This is Fibrio Quinton, an aristocrat of Harun who holds a barony. He is a spy we sent decades ago to infiltrate Harun. With his efforts, he managed to climb his way up to become a baron, and now, he has full control of Atarkan's southern gate. The crowd was astonished. They never thought that they actually had such a high-level spy within the enemy territory. Leonard didn't even need to continue his explanation. Everyone understood how this would play out when he mentioned Fibrio's identity. At this moment, a lord from the eastern region suddenly raised his hand. "Your Highness, if I may ask, what if Fibrio has already joined the enemy's side?" The moment he mentioned this, the military officers frowned. They couldn't deny the possibility that Fibrio might have already betrayed them. "I understand your worries, but you can rest assured. I have sent my trusted subordinates to speak with Fibrio in person, and they have guaranteed that the man is still on our side. However, if he has indeed chosen to side with Harun, I already have a counter-strategy prepared for that." Leonard told them about his plans. Soon, the worries in everyone's hearts disappeared and were replaced with utter astonishment. Leonard's schemes ran deep, making them a bit scared of his cunning mind. They even felt fortunate that he was on their side. "He is weak, but at least he has a useful head," Giovanni mumbled. Alaric was amused when he heard this. The meeting continued for 2 more hours before it concluded. "That was a great strategy," praised Alaric as he approached the crown prince with Giovanni. "You flatter me, cousin," Leonard chuckled. The two exchanged pleasantries, while Giovanni occasionally sneered at Leonard. To his remarks, the crown prince merely laughed. He wasn't even offended since he was already used to Giovanni's hostility. "Knowing that your father will join us in this expedition is very reassuring. I'm glad that His Majesty has approved Lord Lucas's request," Leonard commented. Alaric laughed proudly at his words. Although Lucas might not be as powerful as Dominic and Ignatius at the moment, he has the highest potential among them. He was way younger than the two, but his skills had already caught up with them. In a few more years, he would definitely surpass them and become the strongest warrior of Estania. "By the way, where is Zephyr? I heard that it was injured during your trip to the Enchanted Woodlands. Hasn't it recovered yet?" Giovanni suddenly asked. Chapter 450, Alaric's Worries. Alaric let out a sigh when he mentioned Zephyr. Seeing his expression, Giovanni placed his hand on Alaric's shoulder. "Don't worry about Zephyr. It is a tough lion. I am pretty sure it will recover soon." Alaric forced a smile. "I hope so." The 3 princes chatted briefly before they went their separate ways. There were so many things to prepare, so they didn't linger for long. Alaric headed back to their camp together with his subordinates. On their way to the camp, his mind was occupied with random thoughts about the adjustments to his mission. In the last Hell Mode mission, many warriors were killed. "I hope there won't be too many casualties this time. Is there something on your mind, Your Highness?" A concerned voice drifted into his ears. The one who spoke was the newest member of House Silversword, a transcendent knight named Niall. He was the former commander of Black Windfort's defense force, a warrior with some reputation in the western region. Niall was a bald old man with a muscular physique. Hearing his words, Alaric furrowed his eyebrows and responded sternly. "Leonard's plan sounds seamless, but one mistake would be disastrous for our army. I'm just worried that something might go wrong. I hope I'm just overthinking things." He shook his head and let out a heavy breath. Niall didn't say anything when he heard his worries. He was afraid that he might say something that would hurt their morale. A moment later, the group arrived at their camp. Alaric issued a series of commands, informing everyone to make preparations for their departure. When the warriors heard that they would be marching soon, some of them revealed a look of unrest, while the others just stayed silent to hide their unease. "It seems like everyone is also worried," Alaric thought to himself. In the next few hours, all the troops stationed in Ackland Pass began making their preparations. Each battalion was informed about their respective tasks, and some military officers even collaborated with the others to perform joint exercises to foster teamwork. However, They were time-pressed, so the warriors didn't learn much from the collaborative exercises. A few days later, the beating sound of the drums awakened the resting soldiers. Alaric opened his eyes and donned his battle armor. He then strapped his red cape to his shoulder guards. After making sure that everything was in place, Alaric grabbed his swords and tied them to his waist. He also tied a dagger to his leg and placed a concealed weapon in a hidden pocket beneath his armor. "Your Highness, everyone is waiting for your command." Galanor's voice echoed from outside the tent. Hearing this, Alaric took a deep breath and stepped out of his tent. Upon stepping out, he saw Galanor and Caecus dressed in their armor waiting for him. "Let's go," he told the two. Alaric could already see House Silversword's troops at the battle hadn't even started yet, but the warriors were already looking like this. "It seems like I have underestimated my troops' mental strength." With a proud look, Alaric jumped onto his mount, a disaster-grade war horse of a special breed. The horse snorted and moved forward when Alaric pressed its belly with his legs. Galanor and Caecus followed him on their horses. Looking at the stern-faced warriors, Alaric inhaled deeply and opened his mouth. "Warriors of House Silversword, we are marching towards Haroun. Move out." Alaric pulled the reins to make his horse take a turn. He then lightly squeezed his legs, urging it to move slowly. The well-trained horse understood his intentions. It was a scorching hot weather, so everyone was covered in sweat, but no one complained as they followed Alaric to gather with the rest of Estania's troops. Haroun was located over 1,000 miles from Ackland Pass. Normally, it would be a month of travel on land, but due to the extremely hot weather, the army was forced to make several stops to give the warriors enough time to rest and hydrate themselves. Just like that, 2 weeks passed by in the blink of an eye. Night was approaching and the army was setting up camp in the middle of nowhere. The temperature was also starting to drop as the sky slowly darkened. The winds were becoming colder, so the troops divided themselves into various groups to create bonfires to help them regulate their body temperature. At this moment, Alaric was sitting in front of a bonfire, looking at the flickering flame with a blank expression. "You have been really quiet since we left Ackland Pass." Ivana's voice drifted into his ears. Turning his head, he saw Ivana walking towards him with a big piece of skewered, uncooked meat in her hand. "I can't shake off the feeling that we might encounter something terrible." Alaric didn't hide his thoughts from her. Ivana squatted down and handed him the skewered meat. "Cook it yourself. Having something to do might relax your mind." Alaric smiled wryly as he took the skewered meat. He then stood up and approached the fire. He placed the skewered meat just inches away from the fire and mumbled, "My father hasn't arrived yet and it's making the troops worried." The flame made a ka-cha sound as if it were reacting with the meat. "Although we have Lord Dominic and Lord Ignatius leading the army, we don't know what kind of enemies we will be facing in battle." Ivana stared at his side profile and replied, "It's not like you to be this worried. As long as we follow Leonard's plan, we should be able to take control of Atarkan without many casualties." Alaric's eyes were fixated on the flame as he responded, "That is if things go according to plan." Ivana frowned at his words. Alaric was usually confident, but he had been acting strangely in the past few days. "Is it because of what happened during our battle with the monster colony?" Ivana felt that the battle with the monster colony might have left a scar in Alaric's mind. Suddenly, they heard the galloping sound of a horse. They turned their heads and saw a warrior from a different army rushing towards them with an urgent look on his face. "A message from His Highness Leonard," the warrior shouted. Hearing this, Alaric rose to his feet. His eyebrows knitted and formed a frown. "What happened?" he asked. The warrior jumped off his horse and bowed to him. "Your Highness, we have received word that our advance party has been attacked. Only one survivor managed to return, but he died shortly before he could tell us what happened out there." The faces of Alaric and Ivana fell upon hearing this. "How did that happen? Didn't our scouts say that there are no enemy troops in the area?" This was what Alaric was worried about, an unforeseen situation that would compromise their plans. The warrior shook his head. "The enemies seem to have anticipated our route. His Highness Leonard also mentioned that there might be a spy among our highest-ranking military officers. Alaric narrowed his eyes. If that was true, their entire plan would be ruined, and the identity of their inside man, Fibrio, might already be compromised. "Where is Leonard? Bring me to see him," Alaric told the warrior. "Yes, your highness." The warrior nodded and hurried to his horse. Alaric turned his head and looked at Ivana. "Don't mention this to anyone. If someone will come to find me, just give them a random excuse." Ivana nodded with a serious face. "All right, you take care. You too." After giving her this instruction, Alaric rushed to his horse and left with the warrior. Leonard was marching with the Imperial Guards, which were positioned at the foremost point together with the Western region's military forces. At this moment, Leonard was in a heated discussion with Giovanni about the recent ambush on their advance party. "What is going on?" shouted Giovanni, looking incredibly pissed. Surprisingly, Leonard was calm, as if the death of their advance party didn't bother him. "Calm down. Once Alaric is here, I will tell you what is happening." Giovanni clenched his fists and stared deeply at his older brother. "If you can't explain this properly to me, I might fail to hold myself back from punching your face." Leonard chuckled nonchalantly at his threat. A moment later, they finally saw Alaric approaching them on his horse. The latter spotted them and pulled the reins. He then jumped off his horse and walked towards them with brisk footsteps. "I heard about the situation. Tell me what's going on." Alaric stared at Leonard. He believed that this guy would know more than Giovanni. "You heard him. Now speak and tell us what happened," Giovanni urged. Leonard beckoned to them, gesturing for them to come closer. "The plan I mentioned during the meeting is half false. Now, I will tell you the real plan." Chapter 451. You are afraid of him. Hearing his words, Alaric and Giovanni stared at him with incredulous gazes. "I already knew that there were spies among the military officers, so most of what I said during the meeting was not true," Leonard said calmly. "Which of them is fake?" Giovanni frowned. "Let him talk." Alaric stopped him from speaking further and stared deeply at the crown prince. Leonard beckoned to them and brought them somewhere far from the crowd. 3 seats were prepared, as if he were already anticipating this. Upon taking their seats, he continued, "I wasn't certain which of our men could be trusted, so I purposely fed them with half-true information to make them reveal themselves. And do you know how many took the bait?" He deliberately paused for a moment. 6 military officers. 5 of them are elite knights, and there is even 1 transcendent knight. "Who are they? Tell me so I can go and behead them." Giovanni's aura subconsciously leaked out. "No!" Leonard shook his head. "What do you mean? They are traitors. We must kill them at once." Giovanni was about to stand up when Alaric suddenly raised his hand. "He is right. Killing those spies would indeed eliminate the threat, but we can also make use of them to fool the people of Harun. Has this been your plan from the very start?" Alaric glanced at the crown prince inquisitively. Leonard smiled faintly and replied meaningfully, "As expected. I knew you would guess it right. Unlike a certain someone." "You!" Giovanni wanted to rebut, but he knew that it wasn't the right time to argue with him, so he just snorted and crossed his arms in displeasure. Then about Fibrio. Alaric was more concerned about this. Leonard adjusted his sitting posture and smirked. "We indeed have an inside man in Atarkan, but it's not Fibrio. That guy is our biggest obstacle in taking over Atarkan, so he must be eliminated. With the rumors I intentionally spread, he should be having a hard time right now." He chuckled playfully. "By the time we get there, the southern part of Atarkan will be in chaos, and most of the city's military personnel will be gathered there to quell the situation. This will leave 3 of the city's main gates lacking in manpower, and that is where we will strike." Giovanni didn't want to admit it, but he was astounded by Leonard's schemes. On the other hand, Alaric frowned, seemingly in deep thought. "Wouldn't it be better if we attack another city while they are focused on dealing with the issue in Atarkan? The spies must have already sent word that we are heading to Atarkan, so the neighboring cities will definitely send them military support. They will be too busy dealing with their own problems to send military support to Atarkan. Laynard chuckled in amusement. Hearing this, Alaric raised an eyebrow. Elaborate. Looking at his serious face, Laynard responded with a smile. I just sent a piece of information to the aristocrats of those cities. I told them that we will attack their cities with our full force. So you basically lied to them. Will they even believe it? Giovanni scoffed. Laynard sent his younger brother a look and said, My dear brother, if I send you a letter saying I will attack you with full force, will you do nothing? Giovanni was irritated by his tone, but he still tried to process his words. If I were to receive that kind of letter, even if there is a high chance that it is a lie, I would still fortify my defenses. Laynard chuckled when he noticed the change in his expression. No one will send military support to Atarkan. Well, there might be a few, but they won't be a threat to us. He shook his head with a confident smile. What about the death of our advance party? Is it part of your plan? Alaric asked with a cold look. They are warriors from House Vasiles. Laynard's smile suddenly vanished and was replaced with indifference. Several months ago, their lord sold off hundreds of our people as slaves to a merchant from Harun. If it wasn't for his ancestors' merits, I would have already destroyed his entire family. He muttered coldly. A noble selling slaves to another nation was considered an act of treason, and it was punishable by execution. This is only a warning for them. If it happens again, I won't be merciful anymore, Laynard said in a chilly voice. Alaric narrowed his eyes. He realized that this guy was a lot more dangerous than Giovanni. Are the venerables aware of this? Laynard nodded. I told them my plans. It seems like you have already taken care of everything. Do you want me to help you deal with those spies? Alaric volunteered. Laynard rejected his offer. That is unnecessary. I will take care of them myself. Alaric guessed that Laynard had other plans for the spies, so he didn't insist on the topic. Fine. If there is nothing else, I will go back to calm my subordinates. Alaric stood up. I'm leaving too. Giovanni also didn't want to stay with his brother. Laynard smiled and enthusiastically sent them off. Take care, you two. I will let you know if there are changes to the plan. After the two left, Laynard's smile disappeared. He raised his hand and made a hand gesture. Whoosh! 10 figures dressed in dark clothes suddenly appeared in front of him. What are your orders, Your Highness? With an emotionless voice, Laynard said. The people who killed our advance party, I want them dead. There must be no survivors. We obey your commands. Laynard waved his hand indifferently. The men dressed in dark clothes immediately left. Whoosh! Alaric and Giovanni were walking side by side when the former suddenly opened his mouth. Now I understand why you hate your brother. Giovanni frowned at his words. What are you saying? Alaric paused his steps and looked at him. You are afraid of him. Giovanni's eyes flashed with a glint. Chapter 452. Mount Tyrad. Giovanni didn't say anything. He just turned around and left while waving his hand. Still acting tough. Alaric chuckled while shaking his head. He then went back to his position and told his subordinates not to worry. He didn't tell them about Laynard's plan to prevent information from leaking. Some of them felt that he was hiding something, but they tactfully chose to remain silent. There was only one person who dared to question him, and it was Ivana. So what really happened out there? Ivana was trustworthy, and she tight-lipped, so he didn't mind sharing this information with her. It's like this. Alaric told her about Laynard's plot, and it surprised her. So the Crown Prince of Estania is this capable. No wonder he was appointed as the Crown Prince despite being weaker than his younger brother. Ivana commented with a thoughtful look. Alaric nodded in agreement. He also felt that it was better for Laynard to inherit the throne. If it were Giovanni, the empire might fall into ruins in just a decade. As for himself, Alaric still hadn't thought that far. His only goal for now was to ensure the safety of his people. You should get some rest. We will be marching early tomorrow, Alaric suggested. I'm fine. Ivana shook her head. Hearing her response, Alaric shrugged and walked away. Then I will go find something to eat. The next day before sunrise, the army marched, but this time they took a different route. The sudden change in the route surprised many people, but no one dared to question the Venerable's commands. At this moment, Alaric was on his horse, leading the warriors of House Silversword. Just then, he saw Sikas riding towards him. Seeing him, Alaric gently squeezed his legs, urging his horse to move a bit faster. "Did you find something?" he asked. Sikas nodded his head. "The enemies who ambushed our advance party last night have already been killed. They were killed by the Crown Prince's personal guards." Alaric had already anticipated this, so he wasn't surprised. "What about the spies? Have you found out their identities?" Sikas shook his head. "They are quite meticulous, so I only managed to discover one of them." Alaric raised an eyebrow. Last night, he sent Sikas to investigate the spies and to find the people who had ambushed their advance party. He didn't have much hope since there wasn't enough time, but Sikas did more than he had expected. "Who is it?" Alaric asked in a low voice. Sikas calmly responded. "It is a man named Stephen. He works for the Crown Prince. I saw him secretly leave his tent to send a messenger bird. This is the message he tried to send last night." He took out a small rolled paper from his inner pocket and handed it to Alaric. Alaric glanced at the letter and noticed that the seal was still there. He removed the seal and opened the letter. Interesting. In his past life, Stephen betrayed the Crown Prince and defected to Giovanni's side. Author's note: Stephen was already mentioned before. Check chapter 313 for reference. That would have happened again, but things were a lot different now. Giovanni had changed and become a slightly reliable guy. The conflict between him and the Crown Prince had also disappeared. Although there were still some minor disagreements, their relationship was a lot better now compared to what it was in Alaric's past life. "I thought that you would change now that the situation is different, but you are still the same traitorous bastard that you were in my past life. Stephen, oh Stephen, Laynard is not the man you want to be enemies with. He is much more terrifying than you can imagine." Alaric sneered as he burned the letter using his mana. "Laynard will take care of him. Don't mention this to anyone," he reminded. Sikas nodded indifferently. The army traveled for another week without encountering any issues, but when the 8th day came, there was finally resistance from Haroun's side. In front of them was a towering mountain called Mount Tyrad, and on top of this mountain was a mega fortress that housed more than 100,000 troops. The steep slopes of the mountain made it almost impossible for ordinary war horses to climb. To reach the fortress, only the cavalrymen with highly trained war horses could ascend, while the others would have to climb on foot. "Is it necessary to take over that fortress?" Ivana asked. She was unfamiliar with the terrain, so she couldn't understand the decision of the Venerables. Alaric had already received a heads-up from Laynard, so he was aware of the importance of this mega-fortress. The quickest route to Atarkan is to pass by Mount Tyrad, so if there are enemy reinforcements, they would have to go through this path. If we go straight to Atarkan, the warriors in that fortress will definitely attack us from behind. Once we are flanked, there will be confusion in our troops. We cannot let that happen. He added, "I see. Then, how are we going to attack the fortress when the terrain is against us?" Ivana inquired. Alaric chuckled. "Have you forgotten that we have 3 Venerables on our side?" Lucas Silversword had arrived a few days ago. His arrival eased the worries of the troops, and everyone also became more confident with him on board. "That's true." Boom! At this moment, an ear-splitting explosion suddenly rocked the mountain. "It has begun," Alaric mumbled as he lifted his head. He could see a huge cloud of smoke and dust above the mountain. The only person who could deliver that kind of powerful attack was Ignatius. In the next moment, terrified screams and the sound of mana cannons being fired resounded. "It seems like we don't even have to do anything." Alaric smiled faintly. From the intense fluctuations of mana, he detected that it wasn't just Ignatius who had attacked. Lucas and Dominic had also made their moves. Other than the 3 of them, Laynard even sent 10,000 Imperial cavalrymen to clean up the escaping enemy warriors. Chapter 453. Destroying the Fortress. Alaric calmly watched the burning mega-fortress above the mountain. To think that a fortress of this size couldn't even defend itself against 3 people. Mythical knights and 4 ringed beast soul grandmasters are just different. They are no longer humans. Someone from the back commented. The people who heard his words nodded in agreement. They were also shaken by the overwhelming power of the 3 venerables. Keep your eyes peeled. There might be enemies who will try to escape the encirclement. Alaric shouted to his troops. Although the possibility was low, he couldn't afford to be careless. Yes, Your Highness. The warriors responded in unison. In just slightly over an hour, the mega-fortress above Mount Tyrad faced destruction. The stationed troops that numbered more than 100,000 were all killed. Not even a single one of them was spared. A signal arrow was fired, informing the troops below that the battle had ended. Seeing this, Alaric and the military officers immediately instructed their troops to comb the entire area to see if there were still any survivors in hiding. Alaric's mount was a disaster-grade beast, so it didn't have any trouble in ascending the steep slopes of the mountain. The higher he climbed, the more corpses he encountered. If this had happened on the first day of his regression, he would have felt some compassion, but he knew that killing these people was necessary. His eyes indifferently roamed through the scattered corpses, checking for signs of survivors. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on one of the bodies. He could sense slight fluctuations of mana which indicated that this person was still alive. Alaric sneered upon sensing this. If it were someone else, you might be able to fool them. Several months ago, he found out that his appraisal trait wouldn't work on dead people. It would only work on living humans and other creatures. Do you want to use appraisal on the selected target? Yes. No. Alaric chose yes, and the person's attributes were revealed in front of him. Hold on. He raised his hand, motioning for his troops to halt. The warriors who had followed him immediately stopped at his signal. Alaric lightly squeezed his legs, urging his horse to move slowly towards the person who was pretending to be dead. His subordinates watched him in confusion, wondering what he was trying to do. Just then, they saw him stabbing one of the corpses. Ah! Don't kill me! Everyone was stunned when they realized that the guy was alive. Alaric didn't stab a vital part, so the man still managed to scream. Please have mercy, my lord. I have a family waiting for me, the man pleaded. Alaric stared deeply at the man, seemingly contemplating his choices. While he was hesitating, a fierce look suddenly flashed in the man's eyes. He took out a concealed dagger and lunged at Alaric. Die, you Estanian dog! Alaric snorted and casually grabbed the dagger with his bare hand. How? The man stared at him in disbelief and terror. He was an elite knight, but he couldn't even overpower the other party even though he was using his full strength. Alaric added more force to break the man's dagger into tiny fragments. He then grabbed the man by the neck and stared deeply into his soul. Crack. The sound of his neck being crushed echoed into everyone's ears. After killing the man, Alaric apathetically threw his corpse. Thud. The warriors gulped down hard at his ruthlessness, but no one felt pity for the dead warrior. Check every corpse and stab their heads once, Alaric commanded while wiping off the bloodstains on his hand. Yes, Your Highness. The warriors immediately inspected the corpses around them, while Alaric headed to the top. When he arrived at the top of the mountain, he saw the ruined mega-fortress engulfed in flames. The 3 venerables were also there standing side by side as they watched the burning fortress. Sensing his presence, they turned their heads. Your Highness! Dominic and Ignatius nodded to him. Lucas also gave him a nod. Greetings, venerables. Our men are currently inspecting the corpses to make sure that there are no survivors. Alaric reported. Is that so? Good job. Dominic smiled faintly. Alaric urged his horse to approach them and asked, Is it necessary to burn the fortress? He felt that it would be much better to keep the fortress. We thought so too, but His Highness Leonard told us that there might be hidden mana bombs within the fortress which would kill our troops if accidentally triggered. His Highness said that rebuilding the fortress would be better than keeping a fortress filled with hidden mana bombs. Ignatius responded with a shrug. Alaric nodded upon hearing this. I see. That makes sense. Suddenly, a series of explosions erupted which caused the entire mountain to vibrate. It seems like His Highness was right. Lucas chuckled. Soon, the whole fortress collapsed. Looking at the ruins of the fortress, Dominic muttered with a stern look. We have a lot of work to do. After the battle, the army stayed on the mountain to handle the aftermath. A team composed of 10,000 people was tasked to deal with the corpses. Another team was also sent to clear the rubble and to gather usable materials from the ruins. Meanwhile, the auxiliary unit, which was responsible for bringing the supplies and construction materials, began the reconstruction of the fortress. At this moment, Alaric was helping with the reconstruction when Sikas suddenly appeared behind him. Your Highness! Alaric stopped what he was doing and wiped off the sweat on his face. Are there any casualties on our side? Of the 10,000 cavalry riders sent with the Venerables, 857 were killed. 2388 are severely injured and they are currently receiving treatment. As for our people, everyone is unharmed. Sikas calmly replied. Alaric nodded upon hearing this. The casualties were negligible compared to the number of enemies they had killed. What about the task I gave you? He asked. Chapter 454. Laynard's Guess. I have completed what you asked for. Sikas nodded. All the messenger birds they sent have been killed and we also took the letters. What do you want me to do with those letters? Alaric thought for a moment before he replied. Have someone trustworthy read everything and see if there is any important information we can find. Once you have read them all, burn them. Sikas saluted. I will do as you command. Alaric waved his hand and dismissed him. Sikas left right away. The next day, all the corpses had already been dealt with and a huge part of the ruined fortress had also been cleared. Looking at everyone's busy figures, Giovanni spoke to Laynard, who was standing next to him. With our speed, it might take us a week to complete the construction. Don't underestimate the workforce we brought along. They are the most skilled construction workers in the Empire. Together with the engineers and architects, they would only need about 4 to 5 days to build a fortress from scratch. Do you want to have a bet with me? Laynard smiled faintly at him. Hearing this, Giovanni's mouth twitched. No thanks. Alaric shook his head and urged them to contribute. How about helping with the construction instead of just chatting here? He had been working all night together with the workers, so he only had a few hours of sleep. Who told you to help with the construction? Giovanni sneered at him. Laynard placed his hand on Alaric's shoulder and said, Don't underestimate our workers' abilities. Even without our help, they can complete this project in less than a week. Do you want to bet with me? Alaric pushed his hand away and snorted. Only an idiot like Giovanni would bet with you. Bastard! What did you say? With a fierce look, Giovanni rolled his sleeves and clenched his fists. Laynard laughed as he stood between. That's enough. Let's get something to eat instead of fighting over here. Can't you two see that there are people watching? Giovanni turned around and muttered as he walked away. Go eat by yourselves. I'd rather eat alone. Laynard chuckled helplessly as he watched his brother leave. Please don't mind him, Alaric. Giovanni is only like this because of me. Alaric shook his head, looking completely unbothered by what had just happened. Don't worry. I know his personality very well. Laynard raised an eyebrow in surprise. You two must have developed a bond after the battle in Ackland Pass. That makes me jealous. Alaric couldn't tell if he was telling the truth or not, so he changed the topic. So what's next? Laynard's expression turned serious as he replied. We will leave 100,000 warriors here to protect the auxiliary unit. 400,000 of us will head to Atarkan as planned, while the rest will head to another route to divert the enemy's attention. Alaric nodded and fell into deep thought. While he was immersed in his thoughts, Laynard spoke. According to my subordinates, Atarkan is already in chaos. Fibrio's house Quinton is currently at war with the aristocrats of the city. The neighboring cities are still confused by their conflict, so they don't know how to respond. Furthermore, they are also worried about a potential attack from us, so they are bolstering their defenses. Is there still no sign of enemy venerables? Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. Laynard took a deep breath and shook his head. I haven't gotten word about them just yet, but I have a guess on where they might be. Alaric raised an eyebrow in surprise. Oh? And where might they be? Laynard turned his head at him and said, The city built next to a lake, Nakalub. Alaric frowned. Nakalub was a prosperous city built between a super lake and a vast marshland. Because of this unique environment, the residents of the city were reliant on fishing to obtain their food. Nakalub also established its naval fleet consisting of more than 100 battleships, and each ship was capable of carrying several dozen to more than 100 personnel. If they are in Nakalub, we cannot make use of our cavalry and siege machines. That's true, but we don't need to attack Nakalub. Doing that would be suicidal since the city is well defended and has the advantage in terrain. Laynard suddenly smiled. Do you still remember our 5 target cities? He asked. Alaric thought for a moment and nodded. Yes. How could I forget them? With a mysterious smile, Laynard said, I will give you a clue. Think about where those 5 cities are located. Alaric furrowed his eyebrows and rubbed his chin. The 5 cities. Hold on. He seemed to have understood something. All 5 cities surrounded Nakalub. Realizing this, Alaric stared at Laynard with utter disbelief. You anticipated where they would hide, so you chose those 5 cities. Laynard chuckled. As long as we take control of those 5 cities, Nakalub will be sandwiched. They might even be forced to reveal themselves before we control all 5 of them. You cunning bastard! Alaric was reeling in shock. Laynard tapped his shoulder and reminded him in a gentle voice. Don't mention this to anyone. I only told you since I trust you. Of course. Alaric nodded with a serious face. Don't give me that look. I'm only guessing here. Laynard was amused by his expression. Guess my ass. Laynard shrugged. I still have matters to attend to, so I will take my leave first. You should make some preparations and tell your troops to get ready. We will be heading to Atarkan in 2 days. Alaric nodded. All right. Laynard didn't linger and left right away after bidding him farewell. Look at him go! Alaric mumbled while shaking his head. Laynard had the ability to eliminate Giovanni silently, but the fact that the latter was still alive until now was proof that he still valued their brotherly relationship. The relationship of the imperial family is truly complicated. Alaric left after shaking off his random thoughts. Chapter 455. Attacking Atarkan. 2 days later, Astania's troops left Mount Tyrad, leaving 100,000 warriors to protect the auxiliary unit. They navigated through the mountains, bypassing the enemy strongholds to speed up their advance. To reach Atarkan without alerting the enemy, they had to go through an unexplored area that was said to be home to numerous powerful monsters. With the help of the highly trained scouting units, the army was able to find the least dangerous paths. 2 weeks after they left Mount Tyrad, they finally arrived at the Baikan Plains, a vast expanse of ownerless land. Watch your steps. There are plenty of venomous snakes and insects here. Alaric reminded his troops. All the military officers had already been briefed about the dangers on the road, which included the infamous venomous creatures of the Baikan Plains. When the soldiers heard his warning, their eyes flashed with fear. At this moment, Ivana urged her horse to move closer to Alaric. She then leaned forward and whispered, "Why didn't you tell them that we brought antivenom medicine with us?" Hearing this, Alaric replied with a serious tone. "We brought most of our trainees for this expedition, and they need to train their senses. Otherwise, they would only be a hindrance." Ivana nodded in realization. During the recent battle against the monster colony, she found out that there were many things to take note of other than the battle itself. One moment of carelessness would result in death, and in the worst scenario, one might even implicate their entire unit. Suddenly, Alaric saw a messenger approaching them. "Your Highness," the messenger greeted respectfully. Alaric simply nodded to acknowledge his greeting. His Highness, the Crown Prince, has already left with 200,000 warriors. They are headed to the route that has been agreed upon, the messenger reported. His Highness also said that he wishes you success in your task. The messenger added. Alaric smiled faintly. Thank you for informing me. You may leave. The messenger bowed before he left. I thought he was coming with us to Atarkan. Why did he join the other group? Ivana raised an eyebrow in confusion. Alaric shook his head. I have no idea. Since he is coming with them, it means that he is needed there. Ivana didn't understand what he meant, and Alaric didn't bother to explain. No one can guess what that guy is thinking. Not even me, Alaric thought to himself while shaking his head. Atarkan was currently embroiled in a major internal conflict due to the rumors that Fibrio Quinton was a spy. House Quinton denied the allegations, but no one believed them. More than a week ago, several aristocratic and martial houses banded together to attack House Quinton. Fibrio, the head of the household, was furious. He felt that they were deliberately using the opportunity to get rid of them. In his anger, he gathered all their allies to launch a fierce retaliation. The conflict between the two factions resulted in chaos. The officials tried to stop the two sides from fighting, but their efforts were in vain. Atarkan was so focused on their internal conflict that they failed to discover the predator approaching their territory. When they found out that Astania's troops were coming, it was already too late. Set up the barricades, Alaric shouted to his men as soon as they entered Atarkan. The other military officers also commanded their troops to build their defenses while the enemies were yet to react to the situation. In half an hour, the troops managed to erect simple defenses. Your Highness, enemies are coming. An urgent report came just after they had set up their barricades. With a calm look, Alaric waved his hand and shouted, Archers forward and wait for my signal. Cavalry and infantry units, prepare to charge at my command. Upon hearing his commands, the warriors quickly headed to their respective positions. The warriors of House Silversword had trained for this very moment. Everyone already knew where to go. Even the newbies didn't make a mistake. Alaric nodded with satisfaction upon seeing this. Not bad. They look more comfortable now. Soon they felt the ground tremble. The sound of the enemy's war horns also echoed across the streets. Archers, knock your arrows, shouted Alaric while making a hand signal. The archers moved in unison, knocking their arrows with synchronized movements. From the other side of the street, they could already see the enemy troops rushing towards them with heavy momentum. When they stepped into their range, Alaric lowered his raised arm and shouted with a fierce look. Release! Su! 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 Thousands of arrows blotted the sky, looking like a huge flock of birds flying over the horizon. Facing the incoming arrows, the enemy troops quickly raised their shields. In the next moment, the arrows descended and pierced through their bodies. Ah! Ah! Screams of pain and panic echoed as thousands of unlucky warriors were struck by the arrows. Archers, retreat. Cavalry and infantry units, move forward and wait for my signal. Alaric timed his commands perfectly. The enemy troops were still in disarray, and Alaric took this chance to attack them. He jumped onto his horse and pulled his swords. With a ferocious expression, he shouted, Warriors of Astania, charge with me. He squeezed his legs, urging his horse to rush forward. His subordinates immediately followed him, shouting loud battle cries that shook the entire city. The enemy troops were still in a state of shock, so they failed to react on time. Alaric led his troops, charging fearlessly into the enemy formation. Upon gaining enough momentum, he took a deep breath and slowly gathered his mana into his swords to activate their engraved abilities. Kill them all! He roared as he swung his swords. Whoosh! Whoosh! The enemy warriors tried to stop him, but he was like a beast that had escaped from its cage, wild and cruel. With a few swings of his swords, dozens of enemies fell, their bodies exploding into bloody mists. The enemy commander quickly gathered his troops to form a tight formation, hoping to stop their charge. However, Alaric and his troops mowed them down like a hungry lion pried to its prey. The warriors who tried to stop them couldn't even last a single move and were ruthlessly killed. The streets of Atarkan were quickly covered with blood and mangled corpses. It was a dreadful sight, something that would make anyone puke in disgust. Meanwhile, on the newbie's side, "What are you guys doing?" Aaliyah frowned when she saw her subordinates vomiting at the sight of the enemy corpses. In truth, she also had the urge to vomit, but she held it back. "I'm sorry, team leader. I couldn't stop myself," one of her subordinates said with a pale face. Aaliyah stared at them in displeasure. "Do you guys really want to make our team a laughingstock?" She wanted to climb into a higher position and one day fight side by side with Alaric. This was her ultimate goal, so she was strict with her subordinates. "Stop dawdling and follow me. The battle isn't over yet." She pulled the reins to make her horse take a turn. Without waiting for their response, she squeezed her legs and rushed to the enemy lines. "Quick! Follow the team leader." The same scenes were happening on the other newbie teams. Only a few of them managed to remain calm at the gruesome scenes. An hour later, tens of thousands of enemy soldiers were killed. The remaining enemy troops retreated further to establish another defensive position. "Your Highness, the enemies have retreated. Should we chase them?" asked Galliner, whose entire body was drenched in blood. Alaric thought for a moment before shaking his head. "There is no need to hurry. The ones they killed were only ordinary warriors. It just took them a long time to eliminate them due to the tight spaces of the streets. The remaining enemy troops are mostly elites and veteran warriors from aristocratic and martial houses. We need to be careful. They might have set up traps along the way." Alaric added. Galliner didn't make any objections. "Send our messengers to the other troops and inform them to be careful. We can't be careless here just because we have the upper hand." Alaric instructed. "I obey your commands." Galliner nodded and left to deliver his instructions. After he left, Alaric sheathed his swords. Siccus's team should have arrived at their target's location by now. Earlier, he sent Siccus and a team of skilled assassins to search for the officials and aristocrats of Atarkan. Once they were eliminated, the remaining troops in Atarkan would be like headless flies. "Your Highness!" Urgent report from Lord Theo's side. An anxious voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Alaric frowned and turned his head. A warrior from House Paxley was riding towards him. His armor was covered in blood. "What happened?" Alaric asked. House Paxley's troops were stationed outside the city. Their task was to stop enemy reinforcements from entering. Since they sent a messenger here, it means that there was an unexpected situation on their side. Chapter 456. Nord vs. Fibrio. Lord Theo's troops are currently fighting with the warriors led by a man named Fibrio. The messenger replied in an anxious tone. Alaric frowned. Fibrio. He thought the surviving enemy troops were mostly gathered at the center of Atarkan, but it seemed that some of them were trying to escape the city. Fibrio Quinton was said to be a renowned transcendent knight of Harun. According to Leonard, Fibrio had the strength of someone in the top 5 of the Estanian Dragon leaderboard. With the caliber of warriors that House Paxley had, they wouldn't be able to stop someone at that level. House Paxley has Nord on their side, but I don't think he can last long against Fibrio. Thinking about this, Alaric's face darkened. Theo was his brother-in-law. If something happened to him, Hershey would be devastated. He couldn't let that happen. "I need 100 men with me. The rest of you will follow Galliner's command," he shouted to his troops. Hearing his words, 100 men quickly volunteered to follow him, including Redden, the former vice-captain of the Dragon Guards who once served directly under the Emperor. "You guys follow me." Alaric didn't waste time and urged his horse to move towards the city gates. The warriors didn't know what was going on, but they followed Alaric without hesitation. "I hope it's not too late. Aru, please protect my brother-in-law," Alaric prayed in his heart. Outside the city, the troops from several northern houses, including House Paxley, were currently fighting with more than 1,000 men. Both sides were evenly numbered, but the opposing side had stronger experts in their ranks. Because of this, the troops from the northern houses were gradually pushed back despite their efforts to stop the enemies from breaking through the encirclement. "Stay behind me, my lord," shouted Nord, who was covered in wounds. The old warrior has been battling non-stop against the enemy's experts, so he was slowly running out of stamina and mana. To ensure that Theo was unharmed, he was even forced to take some serious damage. Sir Nord, we can no longer defend this place. We should retreat. Theo couldn't bear to see more of his men dying for his sake. Hearing this, Nord took a deep breath and replied in a low voice, "Then you must retreat, my lord. You are the hope of House Paxley. You must survive." Theo was stunned by his words. "How could I dash? You must not hesitate. Leave now. I will buy you guys some time," Nord urged with a grim look. He then looked at Theo's personal guards and commanded them, "Quickly go and bring Lord Theo out of here." Gritting their teeth, the guards nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir." The guards grabbed Theo from his horse and left with haste. Nord was relieved to see them leave. "Please survive, my lord," he muttered in his heart. At this moment, a powerful presence suddenly locked in on him, making him feel a wave of pressure. At the corner of his eyes, he saw a middle-aged man who was wearing a blood-stained battle armor. He had slick, graying black hair that was combed neatly to the side. From his bearing and temperament, he looked like a noble of high status. "Who is this guy?" Nord furrowed his eyebrows. "Clear the path," the middle-aged noble shouted with a fierce look. Hearing this, Nord immediately reacted. "Don't let them escape." A fearsome battle followed. The sounds of weapons clashing and the cries of the warriors echoed. "Do you think I would let you guys leave?" Nord furiously brandished his sword as he maneuvered his mount to rush towards the enemies. With his fearsome charge, the warriors of the northern houses managed to recover their formation. "Push them back," Nord shouted to the troops. In the middle of the battle, the old warrior realized that he was getting slower and his grip on his sword had also weakened. "No, not yet." Gritting his teeth, he stimulated his energy core, gathering his last bits of mana to temporarily boost his strength. "Your resistance is meaningless." A cold snort drifted into his ears. When Nord turned his head, he saw the middle-aged noble rushing towards him. "It's you." Pulling the reins, Nord narrowed his eyes. "Hiya!" He kicked his horse's belly to make it gallop forward. Clang! A loud clang echoed as soon as their weapons collided. The bones in Nord's arms almost fractured from the impact. His opponent was so strong that even his horse was pushed back. I stimulated my energy core, but I still couldn't match his strength. Blood leaked out from the old warrior's nose and lips. Suddenly, the middle-aged noble swung his sword. Whoosh! Seeing this, Nord tried to deflect his sword. The middle-aged noble sneered and took the chance to change the trajectory of his sword. He was about to pierce through Nord's chest, but a javelin came flying out of nowhere and struck his sword. Clang! Stunned, Fibrio quickly urged his horse to retreat while staring in the direction from which the javelin had come. Rapidly approaching them was 100 warriors led by a young warrior with long silver hair. Who was it? Fibrio glanced at the incoming warriors and locked his eyes on the person behind the young warrior. It's him. But why do I feel that the young man is more dangerous? Kill them all. Leave none alive, Alaric shouted. The appearance of Alaric's troops raised the spirits of the Northern House's warriors. Nord was thrilled to see them. He had even momentarily forgotten his exhaustion. We are saved. Thank goodness. Reinforcements are here. Surround the enemies and don't let them get through, he shouted to the troops. Yes, sir. The warriors responded energetically. The tides of the battle abruptly changed. Fibrio realized that the situation was dire, so he tried to come up with a solution. However, a cavalryman suddenly appeared in front of him like a ghost. Whoosh! Chapter 457. Resolving the problem. Clang! As their swords clashed, Alaric stared deeply into his opponent's eyes and muttered, You must be Fibrio Quinton. Hearing this, Fibrio frowned. Who are you? Alaric didn't say anything and responded with a swing of his sword. Seeing him wielding another sword, Fibrio was stunned. You are a dual sword wielder. You talk too much. Alaric snorted and pushed him back by inserting more strength into his swords. Fibrio grabbed the reins to stabilize his posture and prevent himself from falling off his horse. This young man is no ordinary warrior. He is a transcendent knight just like me. From that clash, Fibrio found out that Alaric was no easy opponent. Furthermore, there was another transcendent knight who was giving off a dangerous aura that was no less intimidating than the young warrior he was fighting. I must escape and report this to His Majesty. Thinking about this, Fibrio raised his head and shouted, "Warriors of Atarkan, head to my side. We are escaping from this place together." Hearing his words, the remaining warriors under his command immediately gathered towards him. "For Harun!" they roared. Fibrio commanded his troops to focus their attacks in one direction. Seeing them fiercely resisting, Alaric raised his sword and bellowed, "Stop them!" The two sides clashed once more. One side was determined to escape, while the other was bent on killing them. At this moment, Alaric and Redden took the vanguard position where the enemy was concentrating their attacks. With the two leading the defense, Fibrio's troops were unable to advance. "Damn it!" Fibrio cursed under his breath. He has been fighting for some time, so his mana was at the lowest level. If they delayed any further, he knew that everyone would fall here. "I heard that you are strong. Show me how powerful the warriors of Harun are." A taunting voice drifted into his ears. Turning his head, he realized that it was the man who had thrown the javelin earlier. "I'm not as easy to kill as you think," Fibrio shouted angrily. Although he was exhausted, he was confident in his own abilities. Hearing this, Redden sneered. In the next moment, the two warriors fought fiercely. Sparks flew in all directions as their weapons collided. It was a fearsome battle. Just then, Fibrio sensed a dangerous force behind him. "Shit!" He quickly turned his body, but it was already too late. A sword pierced through his chest, sending a chilling sensation through his body. What kind of sword is this? He looked down at the sword and tried to pull it out of his body, but it seemed as if the sword was glued to him. Moreover, he felt his hand freezing and slowly turning into ice. "I overestimated you," an emotionless voice echoed, filling his heart with fear. Fibrio raised his head and looked at the man who had stabbed him. It was the young warrior whose name he didn't know. "Kill me," he muttered in a helpless voice. With indifferent eyes, Alaric swung his other sword. Whoosh! Fibrio's head was separated from his body and fell to the ground. His death caused a massive drop in his troops' morale. With no will to fight, they were quickly defeated. In a quarter of an hour, Fibrio and his army fell. Looking at the dead bodies scattered across the ground, Alaric commanded, "Tend to the wounded first. We will clean up the battlefield once the battle is over." "Yes, Your Highness." At this moment, the injured Nord approached him with the help of two warriors. "Thank you for your help, Your Highness." The old man bowed while grimacing in pain. Alaric accepted his gratitude with a nod. "Theo is now receiving medical treatment. You can rest assured." Hearing this, Nord felt as if something was lifted off his chest. "I'm glad to hear that my lord is safe. Now that the situation has been resolved, I must take my leave. The battle isn't over yet." Alaric left after saying these words. The central district in Atarkan was the last defensive stronghold of the surviving enemy troops. The large city with almost 200,000 troops was left with only slightly over 50,000 warriors. Inside one of the mansions in the central district, a fierce debate between the remaining aristocrats was held. "We should surrender. There is no more hope for us," one of the nobles suggested. "Are you out of your mind? You want us to surrender to the dogs of Astania? That will never happen." "He is right. Why should we surrender to those people? I'm sure reinforcements are coming as we speak. We just need to hold on until they arrive." Unbeknownst to them, several figures were lurking above the ceiling, watching their every move with unblinking eyes. In the middle of the heated conversation, a dagger was thrown at one of the nobles. Whoosh! No one knew what had happened, and they only realized that something was up when the man fell to the ground. "Someone is dead. Oh no! Guards! There are intruders here." The nobles panicked upon seeing one of them being killed. To their horror, no one responded to their call. There was only an eerie silence which made them even more terrified. One of them tried to step out of the room, but a dagger suddenly pierced his throat. KHSHK. He didn't die right away. He emitted wheezing sounds as he convulsed on the floor. The nobles were scared witless as they watched the scene. Please spare us. We will pay you. Please don't kill me. They pleaded for their lives, but their voices soon died down as more daggers were thrown. KHSK. KHSK. In the blink of an eye, all the nobles inside the room were killed. Whoosh, whoosh. The people hidden above the ceiling jumped down. Check the bodies and make sure that they are dead, Sikas ordered emotionlessly. Yes, sir. The assassins responded in unison. While his subordinates were inspecting the bodies, Sikas stepped out of the room to check the situation outside. That should be all of them. Chapter 458. Taking control of Atarkan. At the main hall of the mansion, the revolting stench of blood lingered in the air. Dozens of corpses could be seen scattered on the floor. Most were intact, but there were some with their insides sticking out. It was a gruesome scene, but Sikas didn't even flinch at the sight of this. One of the warriors at the main hall sensed his presence and immediately greeted him with respect. Sir, we have eliminated all enemy forces inside the mansion. The other warriors also saluted Sikas, their faces filled with reverence. On their way to this mansion, they had witnessed Sikas's terrifying power. He could kill a group of cavalrymen noiselessly in just a matter of seconds. He was like a specter of death, silent and deadly. Sikas calmly nodded his head. Great work. You guys deal with the rest here. I will find His Highness to report the situation. He instructed in a low voice. Yes, sir. Sikas turned around and jumped out of the mansion through the window. Whoosh! Alaric headed to the central district of Atarkan with his troops. Along the way, they encountered the other troops of Estania, cleaning up the streets. The glorious city had become a land of ruins. The tall buildings had collapsed and some big houses were engulfed in flames. Your Highness, there are civilians up ahead. How should we deal with them? Redden's voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Alaric was immersed in his thoughts, so he didn't discover the civilians. Focusing his eyes, he saw a large group of civilians hiding on the second floor of a collapsed building. Some of them possessed traces of mana, but it was so negligible that they were almost no different from an ordinary person. Alaric raised his hand and signaled his troops to slow down. He then pulled the reins of his horse, urging it to take a turn. Follow me and don't make any rash moves. He reminded his subordinates. We obey. Although the people hiding were civilians, Alaric didn't let down his guard. He kept his eyes on them, watching their every move. Soon, they arrived at the said building and the people inside were terrified. You don't need to hide. We have no intention of killing you. Quietly follow us and I promise that you will not be harmed. Alaric shouted. Their goal was only to occupy Atarkan. There was no need for them to kill ordinary civilians. It was also against his principles to harm defenseless people. A moment later, someone showed himself. It was a middle-aged man with tattered clothes and a bedraggled appearance. With a hesitant face, he opened his mouth. Are you telling the truth? Alaric nodded. I swear upon the name of my family. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's expression eased a bit. There are only ordinary residents here. I hope you are not lying to me. Half a minute later, more than 20 people exited the collapsed building. They looked scared, but they seemed to trust the middle-aged man unconditionally. Alaric became curious about the man's identity, so he used his appraisal on him. However, there was nothing special about the man. He wasn't even a knight apprentice and his attributes were ridiculously low. The only noteworthy things about him were a few art-related traits. Greetings, my lords. I am. The man introduced himself, but Alaric wasn't interested in listening, so he waved his hand indifferently. My subordinates will take you somewhere safe. As long as you don't do anything wrong, we will ensure your safety. Just as his words fell, a young boy, about the age of 7 or 8, stepped forward. He was holding a dagger with shaking hands, his eyes filled with tears. You killed my father. I will not forgive you, the boy shouted emotionally. Alaric's subordinates frowned at his words, and some of them even grabbed the hilts of their swords, preparing to take action. Sensing the tension rising, Alaric raised his hand, signaling his troops to calm down. A woman also tearfully grabbed the boy and repeatedly apologized. Alaric sent the mother and son a deep look. He offered no words of apology. Boy, if you want to blame someone, blame it on the imperial household of Harun. If it weren't for their stupid actions, we wouldn't have set foot on your lands. He muttered coldly. After saying those words, Alaric called 5 warriors and told them to escort the civilians to a safe location. Bring them somewhere safe and coordinate with the other troops to find other survivors. He instructed. We obey your commands. Alaric didn't linger after dealing with the situation and left. The 5 warriors approached the civilians with cold gazes. Follow us. You're lucky, kid. If it were someone else, your head and your mother's head would have already rolled on the ground the moment you uttered those words. One of the warriors told the boy. Hearing this, the terrified boy grabbed his mother's hand. At this moment, Alaric noticed the unusual silence of his subordinates. Do you guys feel pity for him? He asked while keeping his eyes on the road. The warriors were silent. Alaric let out a sigh. That boy and his mother are pitiful people, but it would have been your family's grieving if Harun's troops had attacked us once more. Do not regret your actions. We did it for the sake of protecting our nation and to ensure the safety of our families. It would be a lie if he said that he didn't feel pity for the boy, but there was nothing he could do. The warriors seemed to have relaxed upon hearing his words. 20 minutes later, on their way to the central district, Alaric subconsciously grabbed onto his swords.
Isen sa sumeona.
He narrowed his eyes, but when he felt the familiar aura, he let go of his swords and let out a relieved smile. Sikas. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on top of a broken building. It was Sikas. Sikas stopped in front of him and lowered his head. Your Highness, we have eliminated all the highest-ranking nobles in the central district. All that is left are some remnants of the aristocratic and martial houses. What should we do with them? Alaric was taken aback. He didn't expect Sikas to complete his task in just a short amount of time. He gathered his thoughts and gave Sikas a pleased look. You have done well. The remaining forces will be handled by the other troops. For now, we should look for the civilians and bring them to a safe area. I understand. I will go and inform my subordinates. Sikas nodded to acknowledge his command. Now that the central district had been taken care of, it was safe to say that Atarkan was already under their control. I wonder what the situation is on your side. Laynard. In the dense jungle outside of Atarkan, 200,000 Estanian warriors were headed to Halona, a city located north of Nakalub. Why do I feel strangely unsettled? Stephen furrowed his eyebrows, looking at the trees cautiously. After they split with the main force, he had a feeling that he was being watched. But he didn't discover anything unusual no matter how hard he looked. This strange sensation continued for the next few days, and the feeling intensified the closer they got to Halona. Did someone discover my identity? Thinking about this, he gripped the reins tightly. Just a little bit more. Once we pass by this jungle, Harun's troops will destroy these guys. He had been secretly sending letters to Harun's military, informing them about the movements of Estania's troops. The last letter he sent was to inform Harun that a separate army was heading to Halona. Stephen was already imagining himself being rewarded handsomely for his efforts, which made him unable to contain his smile. We are almost there. Ha ha ha. He could already see the end of the jungle, and he almost failed to hide his glee. You seem to be in a good mood, Sir Stephen. An amused voice echoed behind him, startling him. Hearing the familiar voice, Stephen turned his head. Your Highness? How? Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be leading the battle in Atarkan? He was stunned when he saw Laynard closely following him. Laynard's presence made him feel uneasy. The Crown Prince let out a playful smile. Why? Does it bother you that I am here? Stephen nervously chuckled. How could that be? I feel reassured that you are here. Is that so? Leonard sent him a mysterious look. Shit. Why is he here? I should run. He felt disturbed the more he thought about it. Haroun's troops are waiting beyond this jungle. As long as I can get there, everything will be over. After some hesitation, Stephen squeezed his legs, urging his horse to move a bit faster. Sir Stephen, slow down. Someone called out to him, but he didn't listen. In the next moment, he finally stepped out of the jungle. However, he saw something that made his face darken with trepidation. Chapter 459. That is where you belong. Beyond this jungle was the Great Canyon of Halona, and beneath this canyon was a shallow river connected to Lake Ventura which surrounded the island city of Nakalub. The troops of Haroun should be waiting in this canyon, but what Stephen saw were their corpses strewn across the valley and down to the river. There were hundreds of thousands of them, and by the strong smell of blood in the air, it seemed like they had been dead for several hours. How? Who did this? Stephen's face turned pale with fright. Oh my! I forgot to tell you. A teasing voice suddenly echoed behind him. Hearing this voice, Stephen's heart dropped and his body turned stiff. He could hear the sound of a horse slowly approaching step by step. The Crown Prince stopped his horse beside Stephen's and spoke. A subordinate of mine discovered an unusual letter sent a few days ago. Do you know what was written there? Stephen trembled at his words. That letter, is it the one I sent? There's no way. I don't know, Your Highness. He nervously responded. You don't. Leonard smiled faintly and took something out of his inner pocket. It was a folded letter with a coded message on it. With a glance, Stephen could tell that it was the letter he had secretly sent to Haroun. You seem to recognize this letter, Sir Stephen. That's weird. The Crown Prince's voice drifted into his ears. Stephen quickly shook his head, while hiding his agitation. How could that be? You must be joking, Your Highness. I thought so too. But do you know what we found from those guys? Leonard asked as he pointed at the corpses. Stephen tried to hide his nervousness with a chuckle. Please tell me, Your Highness. Leonard stared deeply at him and said. One of them said that he was exchanging letters with one of Estania's military officers. I even got a name from his mouth. Hearing this, Stephen subconsciously reached for his sword. Who was he talking about? Leonard glanced at his hand and sent him a playful smile. I think it would be better if you hear it from his mouth. What? You left him alive? Your Highness, you are making a big mistake by keeping an enemy alive. What if he spouts lies to you? Stephen became more flustered. Leonard beckoned to the subordinates behind them and instructed. Bring the prisoner here. Yes, Your Highness. Stephen turned his head and watched them leave. He hoped that whoever was captured wasn't the same guy he was thinking about. What is the matter, Sir Stephen? Leonard asked, feigning concern. Stephen forced a smile while shaking his head. It's nothing, Your Highness. It's just that it's so hot today. That's not good. You should drink more water and keep yourself hydrated. Leonard suggested. Bullshit. Why would a transcendent knight fear dehydration? Stephen could tell that the Crown Prince was starting to suspect him. For him to get out of this tricky situation, he needed to be careful with what he said. I will follow Your Highness's advice. He nodded, faking a smile. A moment later, 2 cavalrymen returned. One of them was pulling a rope connected to a handcuffed prisoner. Stephen glanced at the prisoner with a horrified expression. It's him. Shit. Leonard saw the changes in his expression, but he acted like he didn't see anything and spoke to the prisoner. Tell us your name again. The prisoner lifted his head and replied with a shaking voice. I'm Hernan. Just then, he noticed the person next to Leonard and revealed an unusual expression. You are. His eyes suddenly flashed with hatred. Your Highness, that guy is unstable. We must kill him before he can harm someone. Stephen quickly interjected when Hernan was about to say something. Shuring. He unsheathed his sword and was about to make his move when Leonard raised his hand to stop him. Hold on. Did I tell you to do something? The previous warmth was gone and was replaced with a chilling voice. Stephen broke out in a cold sweat and hastily sheathed his sword. Please forgive me, your highness. Laynard pulled his eyes from him and turned his head to the prisoner. Hernan. Go ahead and speak. Hernan noticed the strange atmosphere between them and realized what was going on. He angrily pointed his fingers at Stephen and shouted. His face contorted with fury. You gave us false information and you want to kill me? You bastard. I'm taking you down with me. What the hell are you talking about? Are you trying to sow discord? Stephen blurted out, but... Enough! Laynard stared coldly at him. That is your last warning, Stephen. One more word from you and I will have your tongue removed. Do you understand? Stephen gritted his teeth and nodded, his face gloomy. Hernan laughed mockingly. Look at you trying to save yourself. He then looked at Laynard and said, That is the bastard that I'm talking about. He is the spy who sent that letter. That greedy wacko wants to become a bloody marquis in exchange for giving us information about you. The more he spoke, the darker Stephen's face had become. Shut up, you bastard. Stephen snapped all of a sudden and pounced at Hernan while swinging his sword. Whoosh! A figure appeared in front of him and blocked his sword. Clang! You traitorous bastard! How dare you betray us, Stephen? Stephen frowned as he looked at the old warrior in front of him. Marquis Tyrone. He muttered coldly. Tyrone Agalsitar, the man known as the Crown Prince's right-hand man. Author's note. Check chapter 180 in case you have forgotten this character. Don't you ever speak my name with that filthy mouth of yours. The old Marquis roared as he pushed Stephen back with a kick. Stephen snorted as he stabilized his foot on the ground. Since it has come to this, don't blame me for what I'm about to do. After saying these words, he jumped towards the Crown Prince. The old Marquis was stunned when he saw this. How dare you? Stephen ignored him and focused his attention on Laynard. Just as he was about to grab the Crown Prince, something unbelievable happened. The person whom he thought was just a powerless elite knight suddenly pulled his sword and slashed out at him. Whoosh! This aura! How is this possible? Stephen quickly blocked the sword. Clang! The force behind the attack sent him backward. With a stunned look, he muttered, Since when did you advance? Laynard ignored him and spoke in a chilling voice. Take him down, but don't kill him just yet. He must receive the kind of punishment that he deserves. As soon as his words fell, Marquis Tyrone together with a group of high-level warriors attacked Stephen. A battle broke out, but the commotion immediately died down. Stephen might be a skilled transcendent knight, but against a group of veteran warriors led by multiple transcendent knights, he was quickly apprehended. The old Marquis tied his limbs using mithril chains before locking him inside a steel cage. That is where a traitor like you belongs. Tyrone spat out in a mocking voice. Stephen didn't even have the energy to retort. His face and body were covered in bruises from the amount of beating he had suffered. However, no one felt pity for him. After dealing with Stephen, Marquis Tyrone looked at the Crown Prince and asked, What should we do with the prisoner, your highness? Kill him and feed his corpse to our horses, Laynard responded indifferently. As you command. Marquis Tyrone bowed deeply. Meanwhile, Hernan was terrified by the Crown Prince's words. Hold on. This isn't what we agreed on. You promised that you would send me back to Haroun if I told you everything I know. The old Marquis sneered at him and gave him a solid punch to the face. Pack. So noisy. Hernan wanted to escape, but he couldn't even use his mana, so he could only watch as Tyrone stabbed his chest with a sword. Why you will face retry. Hernan's words were cut off as he died with his eyes wide open. Tyrone wiped off the blood on his sword using Hernan's clothes. He then ordered his subordinates. Feed his body to our meat-eating war horses. Yes, sir. Stephen, who was inside the steel cage, was terrified upon seeing this. He adjusted his posture and kneeled with a remorseful look. Your Highness, I was blinded by greed. Please forgive me. I promise to never betray you again. Please give me another chance. Tyrone was furious. You shameless bastard. Laynard didn't even bother to glance at him. Tell everyone to get ready. We are heading straight to Halona. Hearing this, the old Marquis nodded to acknowledge his command. I will deliver your Highness's instructions to the troops. Laynard waved his hand dismissively. Tyrone took this as his cue to leave, but before he left, he sent Stephen a throat-slitting gesture. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him commit suicide. He reminded the warriors guarding Stephen's steel cage. Yes, sir. Chapter 460. Next target, Midgard. 2 days later in Atarkan, the city has already fallen into the hands of Estanian troops. Hundreds of thousands of warriors fell in battle and many city officials as well as aristocrats were killed. As for the civilians, they were held captive and were forced to stay in the inner ring of the city where a strict lockdown was imposed. To prevent them from gathering in large groups, multiple teams of warriors would roam around the streets to observe their every move. At this moment, the military officers of the Estanian troops were gathered in Atarkan City Hall. Alaric stood on the second floor, observing the crowd beneath him. Suddenly, Aldrin, whose arm had been bandaged, approached him and whispered, Your Highness, everyone has been accounted for. Hearing this, Alaric nodded his head. Let's begin. He spoke to Giovanni, who was standing next to him. All right, Giovanni responded. Alaric took a deep breath and used mana to make his voice travel to the entirety of the building. Attention! The crowd quieted down and looked up, waiting for him to speak. After getting their attention, Alaric cleared his throat and began his speech. We have completed the first step of our plan, and this is all thanks to you. This wasn't his first time giving an impromptu speech, so Alaric managed to remain composed in front of the crowd. He congratulated everyone on the victory and expressed his sorrow for the soldiers who had been killed in the battle. Everyone felt mixed emotions as they listened to his speech. By now, the Crown Prince's troops should be heading to Halona. That city is just as powerful as Atarkan, but I am confident that they will be victorious. When he said this statement, no one disagreed. Now, we will divide our forces into two. Alaric took a short pause upon mentioning this. One will stay here to defend the city, and the other group will follow me to our next target, Midgard. Midgard has a smaller land size compared to Atarkan, but the population of the city was almost double that of the latter. This was because Midgard was a mining city that housed more than 2 million miners, which was about 70% of the entire city's population. Midgard also held significant importance to Harun, so it was protected by an army of more than 200,000 warriors. The city's army was also more united since half of them were controlled by one man, a transcendent knight named Loras Marchand. Author's note: Loras was the transcendent knight who had fought with Marco Harald during the battle in Ackland Pass. See Chapter 381 for reference. Loras was a former decorated general and a high-ranking noble, but due to a conflict with the imperial family, he was reduced to a commoner and was forced to guard Midgard. Your Highness, how many warriors will be heading to Midgard? Someone from the crowd asked. Alaric stared deeply at the man and replied, Midgard's military is a lot stronger than Atarkan, and they are also more united, so I will bring 300,000 warriors with me. The rest will stay here and defend Atarkan. Hearing this, there was a commotion among the military officers. Some of them thought that 300,000 warriors wouldn't be enough to besiege Midgard. Others expressed their concern about leaving Atarkan with just 100,000 warriors. Silence! Alaric shouted with authority. Everyone immediately shut their mouths. I understand your concerns, but you can rest assured. I have full confidence in our victory. His confident voice resounded across the building. Alaric wasn't just saying this to make them feel relieved. There was a reason why he could speak with such confidence. This was because one of the venerables would be following them to Midgard. Lord Ignatius will be taking command of the army, Alaric announced with a faint smile. As soon as he said this, the military officers gasped in surprise. They all thought that the venerables wouldn't intervene in the battle and would only act when Harun's venerables came. Alaric took a step back and looked at Ignatius, who was hidden in the background. The four-ringed beast soul grandmaster revealed himself and calmly walked towards the stage. Your Highnesses. He gave the two princes a respectful nod before he looked at the gathered crowd. Warriors of Estania, Are you ready to march with me to Midgard? There was no speech or any fancy words, but with his presence alone, everyone's morale skyrocketed. We are ready. We will follow you, my lord. Hearing their loud cheers, Ignatius smiled faintly. I will announce the troops that will be following us to Midgard. To those that will be mentioned, prepare immediately, for we will be departing tomorrow before sunrise. A series of names was announced. Those who were called were excited, and those who weren't felt a bit disappointed. Begin your preparations. Ignatius turned around after giving this instruction. The military officers left the city hall to deliver the news to their troops. Soon, only Alaric and a few others were left in the city hall. Your Highnesses, are you two following me to Midgard? Ignatius sent the two princes a deep look. Of course. How could I miss this chance? Besides, I heard that among the troops stationed in Midgard, there are survivors from the recent battle in Ackland Pass. Giovanni snorted. Alaric narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. Pardon my insolence, your Highnesses, but is that guy really there? Marco walked towards them with a cold expression. During the battle in Ackland Pass, he fought tooth and nail with Loras Marchon. He had almost died at that time, and he was only lucky enough to survive after being saved by Alaric. He hoped to face Loras once more and defeat him. Lord Marco, are you thinking of fighting that man again? Alaric frowned. Your Highness, please give me this opportunity. I feel that I would advance significantly if I win against him. Marco bowed his head. Facing his request, Alaric fell into a dilemma.